a few introductory comments. First, I see the name, I don't see the face, but I want to welcome Robert Popovich, our new Emergency Services Manager, Fire Chief. At the same time, acknowledge once again outgoing or outgone Fire Chief Rob Favat for his many years of service. Welcome, Robert, CNO. And thank you for coming, and looking forward to working with you. And I'd like to acknowledge at the same time the volunteer fire department for all the great work they do for us. So thanks for coming. If you'd like to say hello, you please go ahead, Robert.
Thank you, Mayor Lawrence. Good afternoon, Council. I'm looking forward to working with the municipality of Sioux Lookout, the CEO, the municipal staff, community of Sioux Lookout and Hudson. Of course, the dedicated, awesome volunteers that we have both in Sioux Lookout and Hudson. And like you said, I got big shoes to fill with Rob when Rob Favat left, and it's, you know, acknowledge him for the wonderful 20 years of support and mentorship that he provided me that allowed me to be here. And I'm available at the fire hall, so if you guys want to drop by at any time, let me know. We've got a bigger training room so we can physically distance ourselves wonderfully there. So let me know, and I'm available 5 days a week here.
Thank you very much, and welcome to you, Robert. Nice to see you on board.
Yeah, thank you.
You bet. I'd also like to just acknowledge all our staff working around it, clerk, CAO, treasurer, the public works manager on the line. During this time of COVID, I know these are stressful times. It is difficult. You see that, I feel it myself, that the different working conditions. I think it's wearing on almost everybody. So I just want to acknowledge the municipal staff are not exempt from that, and thank you for your service and continue to work. I'd also like to acknowledge, and I'm wearing my special Sioux North High School tie tonight, the graduating class, all students who are graduating this year, and especially our two high schools, Pelican Falls First Nation High School and the Sioux North High School. So congratulations to you all, and I know you'll have a graduation to remember differently than anybody else's graduation. So congratulations there. Also acknowledge that June 21st is Indigenous Peoples Day and starts Indigenous History Month. So we acknowledge that, especially in our community. And public service announcement I was asked to make by the CAO, and Councillor Fenlon sitting there. The water plant went down in Hudson today for a brief period due to a complete power system failure. It's back up and running, I'm told. And the World Water Advisory will stay on until such time as there's positive test results. CAO, did you want to add to that? Or Public Works Manager? You're on mute. Thank you.
It wasn't quite on the mute button to turn it off. Through you, Mayor Lawrence, I'd like to refer to Andrew Jewell, our Public Works Manager, to give further comment on the boiled water advisory.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lawrence, at about 3:30 this afternoon, I received a call from Northern Waterworks, the municipality's operating authority for both the Sioux Lookout Water Treatment Plant and the Hudson Water Treatment Plant, that there had been a power failure at the Hudson Water Treatment Plant, which resulted in the failure of the high lift pumps to continue operation, which subsequently provide the system to the water distribution system. As a result, there was a system-wide pressure loss, which according to the regulations and the guides calls for a system-wide boil water advisory. The power failure was a result of equipment failure within the plant itself. The equipment failure caused the tripping of the main power breaker down in the low lift pump station house, where the power is supplied from there up to the water treatment plant. So it wasn't a result of like the generator or standby power not initiating. There was still power in the low pump house where the power originates, and so the generator system thought everything was fine. It's a failure of the main breaker supplying power up to the water treatment plant. As a result, there's a system-wide boil water advisory for the next 2 or 3 days until we can follow the procedures set out in the guidelines for the disinfection of water mains, which would include subsequent BAC-T test analysis showing negative results.
Thanks, Public Works Manager. I know that's a little bit out of the ordinary to do that, but since we're live streaming and it felt that maybe that could be serve as a public service announcement and just get the word out there of what happens and everything's under control. So I will call the regular council meeting of June 17th to order at 5:35 p.m. And I will apologetically and ask the clerk if there are amendments to the agenda, having created one myself.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, we do have just one item to add to the agenda. It'll appear as item 7.12. The topic is Mayor's nomination to the Association of Municipalities of Ontario Northern Caucus. And I can read the resolution when we get to that point on the agenda.
Thank you. It's largely an administrative matter, Council, that AMO requires these things. So I'll explain it as long as you amend the agenda accordingly. So a motion to amend to adopt the agenda as amended for the regular council meeting June 17th, moved by Councillor Lego, seconded by Councillor Cassidy. All in favor? Silence indicating approval. Carried. Declarations of pecuniary interest.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, I have none.
Thank you. And adoption of minutes. Motion to adopt the minutes of the May 20th, 2020 regular council meeting and the June 3rd, 2020 special council meeting be approved as presented. Moved by Councillor Fallon, seconded by Councillor Bath. Discussion. There being none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Silence indicating approval. Carried. Item determination of items requiring separate discussion. (2020 to 25) strategic plan. I think I'll lift this as Tim Hoare is here. Is that fine? I'm going to lift that. Thank you. Blue box recyclable materials service provision and management. I'll lift that as there's an option in there that we must decide. So that will be lifted. Is it fair enough, clerk? I can do that. Thank you. I'm just doing it that way to save the going around the table, council. Just 2020 rural road resurfacing project.
7.3, yes.
Yep. JT, Councillor Timpson. 7.4. 2020 rural road resurfacing project. Another item, similar but different. Nobody wants to lift, so we lift.
Yeah, one question about that.
All right, thank you. Item 7.5, extension of financial relief due to COVID-19. Nobody lifting. 7.5. Dedicated 7.6. Dedicated gas tax funds for public transportation. Nobody lifting. 7.7. 2019 reserve and reserve fund update.
Yes, I lift that.
Councillor Bath. 7.8, 2020 operating financial reports.
I'll lift that.
Thank you. 7.9, waterfront development project update. Do we need to lift that?
Yes.
Yep, Councillor Timpson, yeah. 7.10, new procedure bylaw.
Yep.
Yeah.
7.11, review of suspension of boards, commissions, and committee meetings.
I admit I haven't read that report. That was sent later, eh? So maybe I'll try to read it.
Clerk?
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, my apologies. There is no report. It's just a continuation of the recommendations to continue the hiatus of committee meetings for the summer months.
Okay, I'd like to hear that, yeah.
Okay. Item 7.12, the added agenda item for the my nomination to AMO.
Yep.
Councillor Timpson. So what we have is all items listed with the exception of items 7.5 and 7.6. Is that agreeable? Thank you.
You were using computer audio, yeah.
So adoption of items not requiring separate discussion. A motion to adopt items 7.5 and 7.6.
Yeah.
Moved by Councillor Timpson, seconded by Councillor Howie. All in favor?
Yeah, I can hear people talking, but now I lost my screen again.
Do you need a moment, Councillor Fallon? I'll proceed and hopefully Councillor Fallon will give us an indication. So we're on to the staff reports and item 7.1. 2020 to 25 strategic plan. The council adopts the 20 to 2025 strategic plan as presented at the June 17th, 2020 regular council meeting. Moved by Councillor Cassidy and seconded by Councillor Lego. CAO, are we turning this over to Tim, or how are we handling this? I think we'll turn it over to Tim. Yep, thank you.
Yes.
Tim, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mayor Lawrence, Your Worship. Great to be back in Sioux Lookout in a way, although it sounds like maybe I'm glad not to be there in the 38-degree sort of frosty temperatures that you guys are enduring, and that apparently will be suffering through in Ottawa very soon. So I feel a bit guilty that we had a nice day here today, but we'll press on. I'm sure, well, we'll be punished later, and I'm sure you'll be rewarded with some great weather. And of course, you can always jump in a lake. You've got so many of them right there, so that'll help in your cool basements. So thank you for having me back. I was thinking back to when I was last there, and I think it was mid-February, just before Valentine's Day. So the temperature was very different. It was snowy. I had to sort of figure out how to brush off the car and all of that stuff, which is hard to imagine in today's conditions. But we had two very productive sessions, I thought, back in mid-January and then again in mid-February, when we were hammering out what the 5 strategic priority areas would be, and then some of the specific objectives and goals. And this document that you have in front of you, I think you would have received in the middle of last week, is, I guess, the fruit of our labors. Interestingly, there was a little bit of a happening in between mid-February and today in Sioux Lookout, as in the rest of the world, that we were suddenly all locked down because of COVID-19 pandemic, as we're all acutely aware. And I found, so, it kind of put us on the back burner. We had been hoping to have this wrapped up in March, I think, originally. So we're now, what is it, three months after that. But the COVID situation was actually, in a way, kind of a useful thing, because it allows us to look at the strategic plan and say, oh, now there's something happening that we really have to, do something about. Do we have something in the strategic plan that actually talks about this? Is COVID anticipated, or something along these lines? And I think the answer, I'm happy to say, because I went through this exercise and thought, how's it going to be? And I found that that we actually did have it covered. So I thought that was kind of good news, and we can talk about that just in a moment. But and I know you have a copy of it in front of you. I won't read the whole thing, but I have to give great credit to staff, Michelle and Brian and Mayor Lawrence, for stepping in and kind of helping out with the front and back end a little bit. So the mayor's message, we had some back and forth last week, and I gave some sort of point form suggestions on what it maybe should say. And basically it's an introduction to the strategic plan, and good job on writing it. I had a closer look at it after our last email communications. And then at the back end, there's a section called "How Will We Use This Strategic Plan?" that was prepared by staff, by Michelle and others on the team. And it looks great. By the way, I hadn't told you this before, but well done. This is exactly what we were looking for, and I think I had provided you with some sort of pointers and just examples of what other municipalities have done. And so I think it's come together very nicely. So just stepping back in looking at best practices in strategic planning, and you'll remember that in our first session back in the fall, was it October? I think one of the exercises that we did in breakout groups was to look at other municipalities' strategic plans, some of the better ones that our team had identified online, and say, well, what do we like and what do we not like, and therefore what do we want ours to look like? So I think that in this final version, we've captured some of those thoughts and some of those best practices. Just looking at what some of the things we were looking for, and I'm going back to some of the PowerPoints that we had that I and Dave had presented to you guys, and basically we're looking for something that's aspirational and inspirational. The concept of less is more kind of comes up, succinct, something that can be relatively easily digested. You don't want to bombard people with too much text, and I think we're good on that front. I guess that one way of looking at the strategic plan is to see it as instructions from council to staff. These are the things at a high level that we want you to focus on over the next 5 years and actually beyond. And importantly, it's based on broad input. And as you'll recall, we had a stakeholder engagement process. It's mentioned by Mayor Lawrence in the introduction, but of course it included an online survey. We had a town hall meeting. We had consultation. We had focus groups, consultations with business and social sector organizations that were very well attended. And the input that we received was broad, it was thoughtful. And I think I feel fairly confident, having done this type of thing with a lot of other municipalities and other organizations, that we got the meaningful input that we got and that we needed, and that really nobody was left behind. Anybody who wanted to have a say, had the opportunity, and we heard, as I say, a broad range of perspectives. And then finally, it's best if in a municipal strategic plan, or really any strategic plan, if there's unanimity among the decision-making body. So in this case, within council, that you don't want to have sort of 4/7 strongly agreeing with it and 3/7 disagreeing strongly. That would not be very good. And so that's I believe that we have that, and we can discuss that a little bit. So just looking at it, I'll read out the vision and mission statements. They're quite brief, and I was pleased with what we came up with on this. It's always a little bit of a gulp when I present something to a group such as yourselves and say, well, this is what I think might work. And then if people hate it, then that's problematic. This is very similar to what I had presented back in, I think that was January that we had presented something, and there were a few little tweaks, but it came through, and I think what we wind up with is very good. So I'll read out the vision, what we're striving to achieve: a vibrant community where diversity, nature, and compassion drive our prosperity. So I was pleased with this, and I think that talking about diversity and compassion is something that is, in my perception, it's important to all members of council from what we heard at those meetings that we had. And it's broadly held, I think, within the population at large in Sioux Lookout. So I think that makes sense. And then the mission. So the vision is that's kind of those instructions coming from council down to staff, and then the mission, which is kind of, okay, this is what we want staff to do: fostering growth and healthy living while celebrating our cultural diversity. So I think interesting and important that the word diversity appears in both. And that's, I think, something that I took away from the consultations and from my meetings with council. So that any sort of questions or comments so far on the mission and vision and just that overview?
Council?
Okay, I'll press on. I know you have a busy agenda, so I don't want to take up the whole day. But maybe I'll just read out the 5 strategic priority areas and their descriptions, and I maybe won't go through the rest of it. But and then I'll look at the how we're going to use this plan just briefly, if that works for everyone. Okay, so the 5 strategic priorities are community innovation and development, and then the descriptive sentence for that: proactively invest in our community to encourage growth and enhance our quality of life. The second one, community wellness. So this, by the way, is where we capture dealing with COVID-19, right? Community health and wellness, it's in there, but I'll read it out. Strive to make our community a healthy and safe place to live for all our residents. Regional collaboration, very, very important. And actually collaboration comes up in several of the other priorities, but this specifically focused on regional collaboration. Collaborate with other groups to address the opportunities and challenges we share. Community engagement, very important, and something that very much came through in the consultations. And I know it's something that's very, very important to many, if not all, members of council. So I'm glad this became its own thing, because some municipalities will kind of make community engagement part of operational excellence. But I like that Sioux Lookout has separated it out, and I'll just read the sentence: engage with our residents and local businesses and encourage their participation in municipal affairs. So, the more participation you have, the better, always, for sure. And then finally, operational excellence. I recall that John Bath, Councillor Bath, you were one of the champions of having this in there, and I applaud you for that. So I'll just read it out. Strive for operational excellence through open communication, sound fiscal management, and exceptional customer service. So that is where we are now. I'll jump to the last page, and I myself can't really take very much credit for this, as I said before, because staff came up with it, but I applaud what they came up with. How we'll use this strategic plan, and I'll just quickly read out what it says under implementation, because I think it's just absolutely bang on. The municipal strategic plan is a living document. The plan will provide a framework, and it very much is a framework, right? So anytime you're considering any sort of initiative, spending money or expending staff, time, resources, etc., you can look at it through the framework of the strategic plan, provide a framework for decision making. It will be integrated into all municipal activities through the development of annual departmental work plans. So that's good. I'm always reluctant as an outsider to commit staff to doing annual work plans or whatever, but I'm glad that's in there. Now you have to actually do them every year, but that's good. That will identify strategic initiatives aligned with the strategic plan. So that's where we are. And then the operational plan, maybe I'll just read that out as well. It's not very long. The Municipality of Sioux Lookout's senior management team will annually develop a corporate operational plan from which the departmental plans will flow. This plan will be brought to council for endorsement and will form the basis for annual progress reports to the community. So the progress reports, I think, are quite important as a way of being able to report on specific sort of progress. And that's something that very much came up from council and from the community consultations, is that they'd like to see how are we doing in achieving these goals. The vision, mission, and strategic priorities identified in the strategic plan will be integrated into the municipality's organizational structure and policy framework. To that end, other municipal plans will need to demonstrate alignment with the strategic plan. Further, all staff reports to council will demonstrate alignment with the strategic plan and refer to the specific goals and objectives achieved. So that's I think great. There's kind of an infographic on there as well that I think helps to kind of make it clear how things will play out. So so I'm kind of happy with where things are, but I open up the whatever it is, the floor, the internet to any comments or questions about it.
Maybe I'll just go around the table. I'll do it in reverse order this time. Take you off the front line hot seat, Councillor Howie, and put Councillor Lego first and go in that counterclockwise order today. So Councillor Lego.
Thanks, Mayor Lawrence. Hello, Tim. Great document. There was a lot of work and effort put in, and it shows. I've gone over it multiple times. There's only really one question I have on page 8 of the report under regional collaboration. It would be the first goals and just the actions for the goals. The second one says enhance the municipality's relationship with Manaw-Yawan. I'm just wondering, is this document isn't finalized? Okay, I was just wondering why it's just Manaw-Yawan and not like SLIFNA and other local agencies in that line, in that sentence.
I'd be open to I'd be open to changing the wording if council agrees, for sure.
Yeah.
Suggest the healthcare agencies.
Yeah, that's fine. Instead of just naming one, we're dealing with all agencies, local and regional. So.
Sorry, I was just going to say, how about if we change it to enhance the municipality's relationship with local and regional health agencies?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Cassidy.
Yeah, similar comments as Councillor Lego. I think it's a really good document, and I like the amount of content that we were able to capture in it and the way you structured it and everything. I think it's really quite good. So thank you very much, and to staff as well for all their work into it as well.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Fenner.
I'm online now. I haven't had a chance to read any of that, but I'll pass on with them for now.
Councillor Bath.
Yeah, I like it. It's much more concise than the previous one, and I know that's something that I was hoping we would do. So I'm quite happy with what we've got. I think we've done a good job. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
Councillor Timpson. The mute button, Councillor Timpson, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I agree with pretty much everything being said. Made it look, it's attractive, succinct. Did a good job, Tim. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Howley.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. And it's good to see everyone again. I see a couple fresh haircuts out there too. Everyone's looking good. But Tim, the document looks great. I appreciate how well you've captured Sioux Lookout and captured kind of the pathway and the plan for it. But yeah, looks great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Staff were part of this. I just asked through the CAO. Any staff comments?
Thank you, through you, Mayor Lawrence. Yes, it was certainly interesting times working on this remotely with Tim and through the COVID-19 process. We're happy with the results of the document, and I especially have to give credit where credit is due. Brian has done a significant amount of work on this, his fruits of his labor are shown in the document as well. So I'd like to recognize Brian as well for his efforts on this document.
Thanks, CAO. Mr. Clerk, I'll let you have a...
Thank you, Mayor Lawrence. Yeah, I really don't have anything to add. I appreciate everyone's comments. Certainly, I echo everyone's comments with respect to the great work that was done by Tim and his team at Capital Park Consulting. I appreciate very much the kind words from our CAO, although she also did a lot of heavy lifting on the project. So I'm happy to share those kudos as well. So again, thanks everybody, and now we get down to the really exciting work of implementation.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, it's also kudos to Tim and the staff, but I'd also like to congratulate council. I'm not so sure if everything in it was unanimous, but everything in it is consensus and agreeable to everybody. And I think it expresses council's vision in collaboration with staff for the municipality for the next 5 years very well. And will be a document that will guide us, and we'll see it referenced on every single staff report that is put in front of us. So it's a guiding document, and we're off and running. So thanks, Tim, and thank you, staff and council. Tim, did you have any closing comments, or Councillor Timpson does? Yeah.
Well, just thanks to you all. I do a lot of these strategic plans with municipalities and other sort of NGOs and national associations and what have you. And this working with Sioux Lookout has been a treat. Actually, it's great to. It's been great to get to know all of you and your community, yeah, I've kind of fallen in love with the place. I didn't mention in our proposal that we submitted about a year ago that I actually own a canoe. So you know, if maybe I should have, but anyway, we got the project. But no, I'm very jealous of what you have, and some of the spirit, and I think the spirit of volunteerism exists in Sioux Lookout is important, and I know that's something that council appreciates and wants to leverage, and that's one of the things that really comes through in this strategic plan. And I think that you have challenges, but you're also in an enviable position, I think, for being able to address those in the coming years. And I think and I hope that this document will help to bring clarity to what council is trying to achieve. So thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
I think Councillor Timpson had yeah. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, just a question. I notice it's 20 to 25, right? Or it's from 2020 to 25. Is that fairly standard now that a council creates a plan that will go into the next council? Is that fairly standard, Tim?
Yeah, well, it is. It is fairly common, and what we're starting to sometimes see is that councils will come up with a strategic plan and then not necessarily update it in the next term of council. You know, and that's something obviously that the next council that hasn't yet been elected for, what is it? I guess it's 2022 is the next is the next elections. So you know, that group, and there will no doubt some of you will be back. You know, we'll need to decide: do we want to and need to update the strategic plan? Some municipalities will just kind of leave what they have in place. Others will perhaps say, well, you know, let's just do a refresh, right, and make sure that it's where we want to be. I've seen some councils will come up with kind of like a 10-year strategic plan, and then they will, at the you know, individual sort of every 4 years, they'll do more of an operational you know, planning focus for council. But you know, really what it comes down to is that individual councils you know, have the power to make their own decisions on that. But I guess that, you know, the nice thing about this document, the way you've come up with it, is that it's I think it's kind of at a high enough level that it, you know, it doesn't really put you in any particular direction that you're going to find, or a future council is going to find it needs to reverse, right? You know, these are pretty sort of universal outcomes that you're wanting to achieve. So I think there's every possibility that it will be just as relevant in 2022 and indeed in 2025.
Thanks, Tim. Does that answer your question, Councillor Timpson?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, Council? I saw the clerk doing a happy dance in there. I'm not sure what was going on, but it must be his expression.
To you, Mayor Lawrence, I was grabbing another pad of paper, gleefully happy that the strategic plan is close to being adopted.
The way it shows on the video, I think it breaks it up. It looks a little bit like a break dance or something. But very good. Thank you very much, Tim. We will now call the vote on the motion that was moved by Councillor Cassidy, seconded by Councillor Lego, that we adopted 2020 to 2025 strategic plan. All in favor? And silence will indicate approval. Carried. Thank you very much.
Terrific. I'm going to sign off, but thank you all, and we'll stay in touch, I hope.
Yeah, and Tim, on that, with that canoe and with the travel restrictions that are in place, in Ontario, please come and spend your money at one of our tourist outfitters.
Yeah, it's only a 22-hour drive to get to you.
Great. Both ways. Thank you. All right, okay. Item 7.2. I'll read this out. I know there's some options in the second and third paragraphs. Moved by Councillor Bath and seconded by Councillor Fenelon. The council directs staff to develop an agreement with B&M Delivery Services of Dryden, Ontario for the collection and post-collection transportation of blue box recyclable materials in the municipality of Sioux based on a presented service rate of $15,283.95 per month, or $183,406.20 per year plus HST. And that further, the council directs staff to implement option to be filled in for the provision of blue box recyclable materials collection services on private roads within the municipality of Sioux as outlined in the Manager of Public Works report dated June 17, 2020. And further, the council directs staff to implement option to be filled in for the distribution of the required blue box bins or blue box receptacles to the general public within the municipality of Sioux as outlined in the Manager of Public Works report dated June 17th, 2020. I know I left it this because of the options, so maybe I'll just ask CAO, should I go to the Public Works Manager first? Thank you. So Public Works Manager, your comments, and everybody's read the report, I'm sure, so your comments.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Lawrence. The recommendation in the report is to contract out the services for the Blue Box recyclable materials collections for the reasons stated in the report. I'm not too sure if I need to elaborate on that any further, or there will be questions coming forth. So I'll just move on to the second paragraph, where there's an option for the services to be provided on private roads, and the rationale for including this in the report is because just of known past history in the municipality, whereby there's always been questions as to the equality of service delivery throughout the municipality. I know that council members now and past council members have been queried by members of the public as to how the service delivery is implemented and the methodology behind it. So I thought I would bring this forward in the report for council's input on this. There are some operational constraints with the various options, but I think that general discussion on the topic would be warranted in terms of making sure that whatever service delivery is provided was also discussed with council, and not just an operational decision made by Public Works. And in regards to the third paragraph in the second option, the rationale for including that in the report is just to get council's input on whether they figure it would be beneficial to subsidize the blue box bin or blue box receptacle requirement, which is a required now with the change in service delivery, with the materials being transported to Dryden for further processing. It's once again, I didn't want to make that decision as a Public Works Manager, and I believe that the constituents of the municipality would appreciate council's direction there in terms of how they want to move forward with that. So based on that generalization of the recommended motions, if council now, I'm assuming, would have some questions on all the details in the report. I will say that I spent a great deal of time prior to assembling the report with negotiations back and forth with Dryden and B&M Delivery. When I went to assemble the report, there was quite a bit of details to include, and I tried to include everything and make it fluid, but I think the amount of detail in there with the options, it doesn't quite as flow as I had intended. However, there was time constraints on getting the late report in. So I apologize if it's a little bit of a struggle to follow through in a fluid manner. However, I don't want to leave any details out either that maybe later looked at would say that if somebody would have known that, then maybe a different decision would have been made. So having said that, I'll pass it back to you, Mayor Lawrence.
Thanks, Public Works Manager. And yeah, I thought a comprehensive report with all the information that we need, I think, to make decisions or to consider the question. So I'll break the discussion, Council, into three elements. First element will be the actual agreement with B&M Delivery Services, the first paragraph of the motion. So if we focus on that initially, any questions or comments on that? And when that's done, then we'll move on to the second paragraph and discuss the options for the provision of blue box recyclable materials collection service on private roads. And then once we've done that, we'll move to the third paragraph related to the blue boxes. So I'll start with the first paragraph and go with Councillor Lego. Comments or questions?
No, I'm okay with the first part of it.
Thank you. Councillor Cassidy.
Yeah, could I just clarification with the cost of the wages, like if we were to go the municipal option, You have on the one bullet point, it says labor 32 hours biweekly, recycling collection and delivery to depot $30,250, and then has the remaining hours absorbed by taxation for the additional employee, 48 hours over 2-week period, 45.5. So the total cost for that one position, we're looking at about 75,750. Is that correct? Am I?
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, you're correct, Councillor Cassidy. That includes the benefit portion of the wage, which is kind of in behind the scenes in the finances in terms of the total cost for the personnel in the budget.
Okay, so then the 137.2, that does include the 45 or the extra hours that aren't necessarily for the recycling program. That includes those hours. 137.2.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, Councillor Cassidy, you are correct. That is
Okay.
the way I chose to present it for, yeah.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to make sure I was right on that. My thoughts on this, I know it would probably make another ripple effect, but the price difference on the two, could either contract out or to try and do it in house, we're looking at about $40,000, 46, I think, something like that. Your estimates seem like very, very precise. How much room for fluctuation is there? Because we're talking, that's going to be $40,000. That's still absorbed by the tax base. That's still over and above what we've been paying for years with Drayton. I'm curious, what do you see a lot more flexibility in that number, or do you think it's pretty bang on?
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, the number being for the contracted services or the potential for municipal?
For the municipal one, if the municipality was to take this on.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, there could be flexibility there, of course. Right underneath part of the breakdown would be, I guess I summarized it with just the direct costs, including the wages only pertaining to the blue box recycling material collection of 91.7. So, and then in comparison to that, to the contracted service would be even a larger gap. However, it's in my opinion that I don't think that we could implement that service with municipal forces without hiring an additional employee. It would affect our operations here dramatically if we were to try and have an existing employee redirected to this task every second week. I'm quite sure it would not work, and it would cause a ripple effect in operations that would end up causing problems. So having said that, we would require an additional employee, and although when I say that, I know further in the report I say that it may be difficult finding work for him, that would mostly pertain just to the winter when we're somewhat restricted to winter control activities and so on and so forth. But I don't think that we can look at this from a perspective without including the remaining wages from hiring an additional personnel to conduct the service. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see the struggle. I understand that we'd have to hire someone. I guess what I look at here is, if we go the municipal route, we're hiring someone in town. They're gonna live here. They're gonna work here. They're gonna spend their money here. It's a lot less cost. It costs less for the municipality, and that money is going back to the community as well. That's kind of my vantage point on it. I understand there are challenges. I guess some of the thoughts I had on that is if there's concerns for working or meaningful work and whatnot, or there are other departments that say rec or something, like I know you might murky the waters at interdepartmental stuff, but is there other departments that could maybe use an extra hand when public works might not? And is there a way it could work, looking at just looking a little outside of public works, perhaps?
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, you bring up good points, and they would be open for discussion. For me to answer that outright, like you said, I'm not prepared to answer something in terms of potential for interdepartmental employee. But I mean, having said that, I think it's something that could be investigated depending on council's direction given as to how we continue with providing service.
I appreciate that, and I'm sorry for putting you on the spot a bit with that, Andrew. I'm just kind of talking out loud, but I'll leave that as my thoughts, and I'll pass it along here.
Thanks, Councillor Cassidy. Councillor Fennelly. Councillor Fennelly, you're on.
Yes. I guess one note for me is the non-use of plastic bags for the waste, and we have to go back to blue bins. Is that correct?
Okay.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence. Yes, that is correct. I believe that was initially also prescribed maybe before Drayton Disposal Services took on the service contract for the municipality, because Public Works has about 260 blue bins in stock that have been here since I've started here about 7 years ago. And so I think that was the protocol that may have been implemented prior to Drayton Disposal Services stepping up and conducting the service in the manner that they do. But however, you are correct. The city of Dryden, for which this contractor now provides service, and not only that, but it would be the same processing and further processing of the products in Winnipeg at a recycling facility. They do not allow plastic bags mixed in with the materials that are to be processed. So we would have to follow the same protocol as Dryden does right now, and I think many other cities and municipalities, whereby all materials are set out loose in bins or receptacles, and the bags are not utilized.
Is there a limit on the size of the blue box?
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, there is not. There's a standard blue box size, and I believe there's other sizes. And with the recommendation of council to go with a contracted services, the contractor that's presented a price to the municipality for providing these services has the ability to collect receptacles. He's stated that he has a tipper on the truck, so his personnel would go to the curbside, get the receptacle. When I say receptacle, for lack of better description, they're the taller garbage type container with wheels and a lid that flips. They have the ability to wheel that to the back of the truck. There's a cart tipper that tips it up and dumps it in the truck, and then the personnel would deliver that back to the curb where he got it from. So there is an option for a larger container to be utilized for the materials. Yes.
So who's going to pay the cost of this? Is the user of it or municipality?
I'm trying to focus the first paragraph right now and open up the discussion on the boxes and bins. Third paragraph comes down. We'll come back.
Okay.
We'll come back to that.
Okay.
Anything else on the first paragraph of the service contract or the municipal work? Councillor Fallon? No comments there? All right, Councillor Fallon. Sorry, Councillor Fallon, you had something?
No, I'm good, man.
Thank you. Councillor Bell. Your mute button didn't.
Done. Okay, yeah. When I first read the report, I was pretty locked into sticking with a municipal operation. I felt somewhat like Councillor Cassidy did. It's nice to have people in town spending their money in town and whatnot. But yet, when I looked into Public Works Manager's report a little deeper, and started seeing the expenses and the unknowns that were going to show up. For example, buying used trucks, and I know about buying used vehicles. So the cost difference, even though it's $40,000 or $37,000 difference, that could be eaten up in no time at all just by having a vehicle breakdown, halfway to Dryden in the wintertime. So between that and the fluidability, is that a nice word, of recycling these days, we don't even know where it's going to be going in a couple of years. What the province is going to step in and change it. Maybe the federal's going to change it. It could be manufacturers and suppliers have to cover the cost of recycling. So I think the best option for us is to go with the agreement with B&M Delivery, with the contracted service. I'm done.
Thank you. Councilor Timpson.
I think as much as we're talking $40,000, I really do think that we would end up spending that in some other ways. And I think probably much better to get a group doing it that's knows what they're doing, is used to it. And we tried to do it ourselves. We might end up with, you know, taking some of the wrong products down there, getting them annoyed with us, them finding it's costing them too much to take out the contaminated products and so on. And the secondhand, I can't think of the name of the truck, but then they would have one of those big blue trucks, I imagine, the big ones, which I understand that's a problem in turning around in the private roads. We can discuss that, how that way could be managed. I think overall it would be easier to go with the contract with Dryden.
Councilor Howard.
Thank you to staff for such a comprehensive and detailed report, especially for the new guy. I do agree with the recommendation made, and I do recognize that there could be unforeseen costs if we do take on that burden of transporting it. So I do agree with the recommendation of staff. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Howie. Yeah, I would echo most of that. I echo all the comments, including Councillor Cassidy's. I think that the risk associated with it, we're more prudent to go contract. The other aspect is we're risking the capital investment of we would have to make in equipment, and once staff is hired in the position created, if there are changes, and the changes will come down from above, from the province, and it's a very fluid. Recycling is quite fluid, and they haven't come down to where they're going to finally settle. And maybe the public works manager, who I'm pretty sure follows this pretty closely, could comment on that. But given that risk, and having, I agree with the majority of council that we are wiser to contract this out. Public works manager, could you just maybe comment on the provincial changes that have come and what you know of what may come and how uncertain that is?
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, the transition of the Blue Box program under the Resource Recovery and Productivity Act, Resource Recovery and Productivity Act, does hold some weight on a decision here, and the fact that it's mentioned not maybe to the point that it should have been in the report, but brought up here in discussion is a good thing. Right now, what we know now, based on discussions with the industry, AMO representing all municipalities, and discussions with Stewardship Ontario, who currently runs the Blue Box program. Right now, we're looking at minimum 3-year period of planning the transition. And then once that period lapses here, like for a more detailed proposed schedule, is there discussions right now currently going on with how the transition will take place, with the proposed regulation being up for review here in August. So that will, the regulation that will be presented will be the guideline for how the program will run under the full producer responsibility model. However, a good point to make at this time is that when the transition does occur, which the earliest it could be is 2023, I believe, or yes, sorry, 2023. Through to 2025, they're saying it's a 3-year transition period, and there's no methodology right now that's been presented as to how municipalities or cities will become eligible for transition. So even though it's a 3-year window and it says open in 2023, maybe Northwestern Ontario gets pushed back to the very end of it in 2025. So having said that, what we do now will reflect how we're viewed at the time of transition in such a way that they think that producers will look at what is being implemented now, and with the rationale that they would just ask for the most part for services to continue as they are. However, they're no longer funded 50% by the municipality, but funded fully by producers. So in discussions with Dryden, when we were trying to determine if Dryden had the capacity to take on Sioux Lookout's materials for further processing to Winnipeg, one of the topics of discussion with Dryden's operation managers was he thought it was a good idea at this time for Sioux Lookout to move in this direction, even though this doesn't have much to do with the contracted services. However, it's just an overview, that it would present to the producers at the time of transition some regional collaboration as to how we're working with blue box recyclable materials in the area. And so having said that, if we had a contracted service provider in place at the time of transition, likely the producers would look at that and continue with that service for this municipality per se. However, and then if we did do it with municipal services, they might ask us to continue with that, or they might say to the whole region, we're taking it over in a different perspective to make it more cost effective, and everything that you have in place right now will no longer be required. There's a lot of unknowns. So there's huge questions right now in the entire industry as to like all the capital that municipalities own, like what's going to happen when the transition occurs. Well, all these compactor trailers and depots and so on and so forth be capital items that the municipality no longer requires. There's a lot of questions. So basically the guidance is to try to remain status quo and not procure any new large capital procurements or obtain any large capital procurements with the uncertainty as right now as to how this is all going to work out in 2 or 3 years from now. And I apologize if that's more detail than you were looking at, but basically that's an overview of where it's headed.
Thanks, Public Works Manager. I don't think you said anything that it was great.
Thank you, Andrew.
So if we're not, by my notes, I see a pretty good consensus, and I'm not sure where Councillor Cassidy is sitting now, but
I'm in my basement.
Gotcha. Thanks, Councillor Cassidy. My straw poll vote from the comments there was that the council was going to adopt this part of the motion as recommended by staff. Is that fair enough, Councillor Timpson?
Well, yeah, my understanding is that the public can make comments, but how do we see what the comments are? The public that are viewing this on Facebook, I understand that they can make comments. How do we view those comments?
Let's Kirk answer that. Thanks, Kirk.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, in the advertisements that are published in the newspaper, on our website, and in our social media feeds, public are advised that if they wish to ask questions or make comments on any of the reports on the agenda, that they email the clerk by noon on the day of the meeting. I have not received any questions or comments for this evening's meeting. This meeting is, as they have the last few have been, is being live streamed on Facebook at this time, and members of the public are likely watching and maybe making comments on Facebook, but that is in the process that we've implemented to receive public comments. So the process is the public is encouraged to email the clerk by noon on the day of the council meeting, and then those questions and comments would be brought forward by the clerk as council gets to the various items on the agenda.
Thanks, Kirk. Anybody else have anything on the first paragraph of the motion before we move on to the options on private road collection? Nothing else. I will move on to the second paragraph.
Okay. Sorry, Mayor Lawrence.
Sorry.
I just wanted to follow up. I guess where I was at and where I was sitting was I was putting it out there. That was kind of my take on it. I was thinking that there is a way that we could do this in-house, it would be ideal. Person was to live here and whatnot. But I do understand. Like I said, I understand the challenges. So I asked about the flexibility in that number, how precise it is. There's understand it's not an exact science pulling a report like this together and getting every number right. And I am okay with going the contracted services. I was just throwing out my suggestion for some discussions on the matter. And I do appreciate the Public Works manager's in-depth discussions on this and the way he articulated it out. It becomes a lot clearer now that's if we are to contract it out, then it's just going to save us probably a lot of headache down the road. So thank you.
Thanks for that. Yeah, I think when you asked the question about the certainty of the number or whatever, I think that with the contracted number, you have much more certainty than with the municipal number because it is a contract. Thank you. So on the second part of the motion, which involves the recyclable materials collection services on private roads, I believe there are 3 options. Public Works Manager, did you want to briefly outline each option before we start the discussion?
To you, Mayor Lawrence, I'd be happy to. I was asked by the CAO if I would, prior to the report being finalized, perhaps recommend one of the options in the report, and I gave her just my explanation that I would like council's input based on past experience with the residents of the municipality, somewhat questioning or always asking about the methodology behind service delivery. But having said that, I believe the best option for the municipality to employ to continue with service on private roads would be option 1. And then Public Works would make an operational decision internally as to how we manage that service delivery in terms of asking people to set out in bags or maintaining a blanket wide approach across the municipality of bins or receptacle only. We'll figure that out internally as to whether we ask them as an exception to keep it in bags for the simplicity of us picking it up in a smaller vehicle, or we make some adjustments so that we can pick it up in bins like every other person, and there's no exception there, and then we'll figure out how we deal with that material and get it back. One thing that's changed slightly since I put the report together is in conversation with the proponent, B&M Delivery. He came back afterwards in an email as we carried on some discussions and questions and stated that they have commercial recyclable bins that they provide for their commercial customers in Dryden, and he wouldn't have an option. He wouldn't have an issue with providing Sioux Lookout with a bin in the Public Works yard for the purposes of placing those materials until such a time they were transferred to his truck. So that would essentially eliminate the requirement for the shed storage that I discussed in some places throughout the report. In terms of the second option, I don't think that it would be fair to ask a contractor to park on the side of the highway in the wintertime and cut open bags to put the materials into his truck in the absence of bags. I don't know the exact quantities, but I'm just going to assume that, say that there's 5 residents down the road and each one brings out 2 bags and you have 10 bags. The time to look at the contents, open it up, put it in a truck, I don't think that's a fair request for the contractor or municipality if the municipality was doing. But having this discussion so far in the meeting here, knowing now that we're likely going to go with the contracted services, I don't think that would be a good option for us to ask him to do. And then option 3 would be the same. It still involves placement in bags, and then I think they would also raise complications in terms of when the person was expected to deliver the products and if Public Works was open and so on and so forth. And so having said all that, when you're putting a report like this together, you're trying to present every option possible. But then, however, when we get together like this and we have these discussions, you kind of talk yourself into what would work best. And having an open discussion like this, I think option one, in my opinion, would be the best for continued service on private roads.
Public Works Manager, any discussion for council, and maybe council with comments, questions, or my 30 state meeting. I'll start with Councilor Reagan.
The only option I didn't see on there was for people to bring their recyclables to a central location, or have a location for them to drop it off instead of us going out and picking up recycling. Was that option even considered, from the option of having people bring their own recycling into town, or having a place out at the dump we can buy bins and put up a small shed so people can separate all of the recycling themselves, compared to having us paying more wages, more time in collecting all of the recyclables from residents' homes. I was wondering if that option was considered.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, do you mean Councillor Lego as an overview of all the municipalities' collection, or just from private roads? Sorry, I don't understand. I'm confused there. Yeah.
Okay, no, for all of it. For everyone that wants to recycle, we would have a spot in the community where they can come and drop, just like Kenora, they have a recycling spot. You go there and you put all your recycling into the separate bins for the different plastics, papers, and then it's all clean, and then it's taken. So that would be an option for everybody in the municipality to bring their own recycling in instead of us picking it up.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, that wasn't an option presented, and quite truthfully, I did not consider that option because at this time we don't have the infrastructure to have what would be considered in that as a depot. So I know the city of Kenora operates a depot of that manner. I think it's manned the entire time, but they also provide residential collection as well. It is an option, I guess, that would have to be considered. It's not something that could be implemented in such a time whereby this current contract lapses and we have to have something. So having said that, if we chose now to enter into a contract with this as a contracted services with B&M Delivery, that's not to say that throughout the time when the contract is in place that we couldn't look at options like that in the future as to how the municipality would proceed with this service, bearing in mind the future transition to the full producer responsibility.
Okay. One more question. Just in regards to the Stewardship Ontario Blue Box funding. On page 6 of your report, I don't know if you have your report in front of you, Andrew. Just right at the bottom, it said that the funding was $75,337. Mm-hmm. And then when you were doing your estimates on page 11 and 12, it says that the stewardship funding was $50,000, or to be determined for 2020. I was wondering why there was a $25,000 difference in the two estimates, or in the two funding structures.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, I can answer that question. Yes. So right now, when I go onto the REPRA website and I go to the data call, and so what they do every year is they go to the producers. The Stewardship Ontario and REPRA come up with a total cost to deal with recycling in Ontario, and under the current legislation, the producers are responsible to pay 50%. So they come up with a number of like $220 million to deal with all the recycling in Ontario, for which the producers are responsible for, let's say, $120 million, just to make it simple. 50%, let's say the number before was 240, now it's 120. From that, every municipality and city in Ontario reports to REPRA what they've collected and what their costs were. And then REPRA takes all that information and then from that develops a formula to divvy out that $120 million to every municipality in Ontario based on their costs and the model, how it's utilized to divvy up that $120 million that's subsidized from producers. For 2020, REPRA has determined that our allocation is up from 50,000 to 75,000, and that is mostly related to the fact that they chose to audit us. And during the audit process, though, they didn't find anything wrong. And what they were basically auditing the municipality on was the fact that with our current service provider, there's always materials that are left on site that he does not market. And therefore, we have to report those materials to REPRA as in stock. So every year when I report the following year, I have to assume that the materials that were in stock the year previous were now marketed in the materials we're reporting the following year. REPRA didn't like the way that I was doing that. We were audited. The auditor didn't find anything wrong. However, REPRA tweaked our numbers, and by doing so, they came out higher with what the municipality potentially could receive for the subsidy. Having said that, in this number of 75,000, another reason why I said it was yet to be confirmed is because there has not been an agreement reached to date between the stewards and Stewardship Ontario and REPRA as to what their allocation is. So they have not agreed to the total cost, and therefore the 50% of what they're required, it's still not finalized. So the number that's represented here is based on an estimate of the total producer input into the model based on 2019 and the fact that we were audited and they came up with a higher number. So that number is not concrete, the 75,000, although yet that's what's posted when I go to get the information. So it's just was safer for the terms of this report at this time to use the number that we know that we received last year and the year prior, which was 50,000.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrew.
You're welcome.
Councilor Cassidy.
Yeah, I am okay with option one as well. If that's what Public Works manager thinks is the best. I agree that when you spell it out with option two and having a truck pulled over for an extended period of time, ripping bags open, you got windy days, you got recycling bags blowing in ditches. It makes more sense to localize it to driveways and to have them go pick it up there at those and provide that service for the people out of town there as well. So.
Thank you, Councilor Cameron.
No, I agree with everybody else on that.
Good, thank you.
Yep.
Councilor Brown.
Yeah, I like option one. I think that's the best way to go. The only thing I would say about it, I'd like to see us be specific about what the pickup is going to be. I believe it should be boxes, not bags. I think we need to have consistency throughout the municipality. We've heard that before, that we haven't had that, and I think this is one way to do it. Everybody has to put their recycle in a box rather than having a separate set of rules for the rural. And the Public Works can figure out how they're going to keep it in the back of the truck from blowing around, and that's fine. They can do that. I'm quite sure. So I would like to see that sort of added into there as a requirement rather than an option.
To you, Mayor Lawrence, I have no problem accommodating that. If we want to remain consistent throughout the municipality with the policies involved in the collection of blue box materials, then I agree. It makes for a more consistent approach. It's less complicated, and therefore we will adjust operations accordingly to accommodate.
I'm good. Yep.
I think option one is the most practical. short term and long term. And it would be nice to be able to do it ourselves, but I just don't think it's practical and would cost us more in the long run. And option one, yes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Howard.
Yeah, I do agree with option one, and also Councillor Bath with the consistency across the municipality. I'd also like to echo, I mean, it would be an environmentally conscious decision as well to eliminate the single-use plastic. So I'd like to see that amended. Thank you.
Thank you. So I seem to have pretty good consensus, or whether it's consensus, on option one. Unless there's anybody with anything different to say, I'll move on to the third paragraph. Thank you, Council. So the third paragraph deals with the options for the distribution of the required blue box bins or blue box receptacles to the general public. And again, I'll go to Public Works Manager to introduce or comment on the options.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, this is just an option presented to Council as to potential resistance from the public, perhaps, in having to acquire additional materials, being bins or receptacles, in order to continue participation in the program. Maybe it's not such an obstacle for residents to absorb. However, right now, if you were to drive around on Wednesday south of the tracks, which was a collection day, I'm going to say that at least 80% of what was set out is in plastic bags. So it'll be a significant transition for a lot of people that are currently participating in the program. So I just thought perhaps Council may want to consider if there was a means to find some funds to partially subsidize the procurement of the required bins or receptacles, to then pass that on to the public at a reduced rate in order for them to more willingly or actively participate in the program and not be maybe such a financial burden on some to do so. That was basically the intent there. Another thing that perhaps we could discuss is we have approximately 260 bins currently at Public Works. To the best of my knowledge, they were purchased over 8 years ago, and we currently sell them, I believe, for $10 or $12. We could include those as well in a potential reduction if that's what Council chooses, or perhaps we could even do further with those, and because they're an inventory and a long absorbed expense, I don't know if Council would want to consider that or not, or just go with one approach across. It's just some options for Council to consider, knowing that there's a change that's required moving forward in order for residents to continue to participate in this service.
Okay, so Public Works Manager, we have two options here. One is that it's complete cost recovery. Residents would buy their blue boxes at cost for the municipality. And option two is a subsidized 50% subsidy from the municipality, and maybe it would be we would throw in our existing inventory into that. Both those options, I guess. That's fair enough. When I say put them
Sure.
in,
Yep.
you sell them at cost, or put them in and sell them at 50%.
Correct. Yep. Sorry. Yeah. That's correct. Yes.
So, Council, I'm here once again looking at those two options for blue boxes. Councillor Lake.
I think people are passionate about their recycling, that they can buy their own blue box. We have 200 some odd. They can get a good deal right now at $10 or $12 a piece if they want to jump on it right away. And I don't know if there's an option for us to, as a municipality, look elsewhere for used blue boxes, or if there's a cost difference between a brand new one and a used one, and sell them to residents. That could be an option. But for me, I would go with option one, that people could buy their own blue box, and we can sell the ones that we have that are sitting there. You might as well make a couple of dollars off each one.
Councillor Cassidy.
Yeah, that was my initial thought, was to do that, because when you think about it, a pack of the blue bags is what, $7-8, and so you buy, that's 2 packs of bags, and then you don't have to buy bags anymore. So long term, you're going to save money. But then I had another thought too, and I know there's always issues in recycling with the contamination and whatnot. If we were to get the bins and offer them at a cost, or absorb 50% of the cost, is there the option that we can provide some messaging on things to not put in there, making sure you rinse out all your containers, and put some of that stuff, just some good reminders for people, put them on there, because in the long term, those reminders and having better quality recycling going through is actually going to help us in the long run with dealing with contaminations, or with the service provider and the depot coming back and saying, oh, your recycling is contaminated, you're getting too much stuff there. It could just be a good PR and good reminder for people about what should actually go in and how you should prep it before it goes into recycling.
Public Works Manager, you want to comment on that?
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, I am aware that when you purchase bins or order bins, there is options, for example, to personalize, from what I understand, like a municipal logo or something like that. Having said that, if there are options to personalize them, it could be investigated, as Councillor Cassidy has suggested, that some very simplistic messaging on the box is everything rinsed and cleaned and in conformance to what's acceptable, right? It's a good idea, actually, and it's something that we can investigate to see. I'm not, and then at the same time, I'm not too sure. I'm assuming that there would be an additional cost for some personalization to the bins, but I haven't investigated thoroughly in what's required. And if the municipality, I think what most municipalities or cities do is they acquire the bins and then they put them for sale to the public, and they offer that service. That could be, I guess, included, where it's maybe missing from the report, is if the municipality wants to do that with either option, like perhaps like Councillor Lego just suggested, we just sell the 260 or so that we have in stock, and then every other participant afterwards, for example, goes to the local hardware store to purchase them. I guess that could be an option as well. It's not really presented in the report that way, and I didn't think of that. I was just thinking more along the terms that the municipality would go out and acquire 750 bins, let's say, with some buying power for a reduced cost because of the volume, and then pass them on to the public that way. But personalization is an option, and it would have to be further investigated.
Councillor Cassidy?
No, I think I would be in favor of potentially offering a reduced rate and doing the personalization. That'd be my thought. And I know the Environment Committee and some of our members have pulled together, and we have the documentation there. So all we got to do is pull some of that stuff, and we can have some simple messaging, because I think there's probably a bit of a quicker turnaround for some of this. So it could happen pretty quickly.
Thanks, Councillor Cassidy. Was that then option 2? Was that the 2 options?
I would be in option 2, with the caveat that we can do some personalization about quality control for recyclables.
Thank you. Councillor Fallon.
Hello. I don't know. I'd like to see some more options for the blue boxes, seeing as how we used to have them years ago. And now we don't have them anymore. Some people still hang on to them, and some of them haven't at this time. But the other thing is the size of the box. What kind of truck are they going to be picking it up in, and can they dump them? By themselves, or they're going to have automatic pickup on them. So that detains what kind of blue bin you have. I know another thing that in Markham, Ontario, where my sister lives, they sort the blue bins And if there's something contamination in it, they won't pick it up. They'll put a sticker on it stating contaminated or whatever they find, and they leave it there. And then the person that owns the bin has to go to the town office and pay a small fine, and they'll fix it up that way there, and then they'll put it out again next week and they pick it up. Some along that lines. Just to keep things clean and when they're dumping in their blue bin truck. Okay, that's it. It's good for me.
So on that, Public Works Manager.
I can't hear you.
I'm talking Public Works. Do you have any comments?
No, I can't make you out. It's real getting to be a little garbly again on my end here.
Council, can you hear me all right? Other members of council? Thank you.
You are a little staticky, Mayor Lawrence, but I can still make you out.
Yeah.
Councilor Fallon, I'm doing the best I can here. Not sure if it's my end or your end or something in between. In terms of the options, I understand you've asked for some other comments, and maybe Public Works Manager, did you want? I thought you said earlier, Public Works, that if a resident chose to have the larger bin that could be picked up by the truck and dumped, that was acceptable to this contractor?
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, you are correct. That's what would be referred to as the larger receptacle. The contractor has discussed with me that he purchases the receptacles that they use for the cart tipper on their truck. So it's not essentially an automated arm that you see in a lot of the cities, whereby the driver just drives by and an automated arm comes out and picks up the receptacle and tips it. This is similar, but it's a manual effort to get the receptacle to the truck, but then the truck has the mechanism on it to tip it. So it's not a strain for the operator to tip it. In terms of a bin, there's a standard size bin that's typically used. There could be larger ones ordered if there maybe, if there's some public interest in doing so, but that's with this current service, with the proposed current service provider being B&M Delivery, he has the ability to accept the larger receptacles and well as the standard bins, and as long as the bin isn't too large, I don't think that he'd have any issues with a slightly larger bin than what the standard size is.
Okay. Having said that, when you're looking around, when you're driving around, when they're picking up blue bags, most people have, multiple bags, 1 or 2 bags, and some even more than that when they're collecting them. I don't know if that's because they're waiting between pickups, like a month pickup or something like that. So I think we should have to keep it in mind about the bigger boxes for those people. And that's good with me.
And between option 1 or option 2?
Option 2, I guess. Everybody seems to be leaning towards that one.
Thank you. Councillor Bath.
I'm not leaning towards option 2. I think option 1 is the way to go. I think recycling is a personal thing to do. You decide you want to recycle or you don't. And so I think you have a responsibility to the environment to buy into it and to buy the boxes. The problem I have with that is it'll be discouraging for people who need multiple boxes, and some people may. And so that I believe we need to make sure, I think the municipality should buy the boxes and sell them at a not-for-profit. That would be one way to keep the cost down. I think we don't want people having to go and buy them on the open market. I think that would probably be expensive. And I think if the municipality would buy them, whatever sizes the sizes would be consistent then. So that would be satisfactory to the contractor. But I think I don't know how we're going to pay 50%, regardless of how we get these boxes out there. the consumer's paying for them. The taxpayer's paying for them. Whether it's going to be in his taxes or he's going to buy the boxes. So I think we may as well be straightforward. Buy the boxes if you want to recycle. If you don't want to recycle, then it's fine. You put it in your garbage bag at $2.35 a shot or whatever it is. Option one.
Public Works Manager, do you have a comment on any of that?
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, I agree with Councillor Bath to the extent to which he said in terms of the municipality acquiring bins or receptacles at a larger volume for a potential reduced cost to then pass on to the public at a not-for-profit rate. Just basically whatever it costs to procure the item and then any shipping that's involved. So I agree with what he says in terms of that. Yes.
Yeah, and in terms of putting the recyclables in the garbage, I thought that was not permitted.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, I'm chuckling here because I kind of smiled when that words were said because yes, that would be contrary to our current waste management bylaw.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Bell. We're encouraging people to break the bylaw. Thanks, Councillor Timpson.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason the government is subsidizing this is because it's a necessary thing for us to do. As far as I'm concerned, should not be optional. But having said that, the best way to encourage people to be environmentally conscious is to make it as easy for them as possible. So I would be happy with option 2, in which we subsidize a box. If we have to go with boxes, why do we have to go with blue boxes? Could you put your own cardboard box out there with painted blue if you have to, or have a blue sign? Like, if we want this to work, then we have to make it as easy as possible for people. And the whole idea of circular economy, it will go nowhere if we just see this as some privilege people have to recycle. And really, we don't want any more of that junk in our landfills. And maybe the Environment Committee could work on a public awareness, cost out how much you save by recycling, getting more people recycling. Because I know a lot of people aren't, but they should be. So I would go with number 2, or some way in which they could just put their stuff out to indicate that this is recycling. And if they don't want to buy a $10 box, fine. We'll make a little bit of money on the 200 that we have. So
through you, Mayor Lawrence, I don't think there would be a problem if a resident wanted to put their items out, let's say in a Rubbermaid container that they had from when they moved years ago. It doesn't necessarily have to be blue or have a recycling symbol on it or anything. As long as it's something that contains the materials and that the contractor could view the contents properly to ensure that everything's clean and conforms to what is allowable to be set out. I don't think that putting items out in a cardboard box is a good idea. It'll rain on some occasions. I'm sure contents will fall out. I do believe that, and I'm going to say this, although I maybe stand corrected at a later time, I do believe that under the new service, setting out like a cardboard box full of compressed cardboard may no longer be acceptable, whereby all the cardboard would need to be folded and contained in a bundle by either tying it or in a bin or receptacle. So, boxes, I wouldn't recommend boxes, but I don't think there's any issue, and I can't foresee the contractor having any issues with someone using a larger Rubbermaid bin to set their materials out in, if that's what they had on hand and chose to utilize. As long as, like I said, it's contained and you can see the contents, and to ensure that everything that's in there is as it's supposed to be.
Councillor Simpson?
No, that makes sense. It could be red or yellow or whatever.
Thank you. Councillor Howie?
Yeah, so I think it's important that everyone does recycle, and I think everyone is responsible to the environment to recycle. So I do agree with Councillor Timpson in respect with option 2, or finding some kind of other method for residents to recycle. If it is in a Rubbermaid bin or some kind of box that, not box, sorry, but some kind of bin that won't get destroyed by the weather, but something they can put out, and we're not forcing residents to purchase. However, if we do go the route of option 2, I do support that as well, or something in between.
Thank you. Yeah, I think from what I'm hearing, there's more. Well, I'm going to say I'm in favor of option 2. I understand the evidence to go with option 1, but I worry about segment of society that might have trouble finding that extra money just buy the box. And then are we encouraging more littering? Are we encouraging less recycling? I think we need to do what we can to encourage recycling for all the right reasons, and we need to make it as available as possible to as many as possible. And if, I would go with option 2 initially, absolutely to do that. And I think that perhaps in terms of just a question, Public Works Manager, and I'm sorry if I didn't pick it up in the report. In terms of streams, how many? We're currently we're doing 2 streams of recycle. How many will we have with the new system?
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, nothing is changing in terms of what's collected. That's a good point. That probably wasn't referenced in the report. What I received from Dryden in terms of what they collect right now is identical to what Sioux allows for set out for materials. So plastics 1 through 7, tin, Tetra Pak containers, aluminum, cardboard, newspaper, fine regular paper. Everything that we currently set out will still be eligible under the new service with the post-collection processing being done in Dryden.
So everybody will need 2 blue boxes in order to separate those 2 streams.
No, sorry, through you, Mayor Lawrence, everything can be commingled. So it's still, even today, when you look at what people set out in bags, commingling is allowed. And although some people do still separate, it's not required. So if you were to buy a larger receptacle, for example, you could contain your paper and your plastics and aluminum and so on and so forth in the same receptacle because it is a commingled product that is sent to the recycling facility in Manitoba.
Okay, thanks. I guess I missed that memo. We've been separating into those 2 streams for quite some time. Good. So, Council, I'm going to suggest that I know there was some for option 1, but by my count, I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for option 2. But I'll come back to the table in a second. There's also some caveats that I think can be, and I'll look to the CAO, Clerk Public Works Managers, as panel, just additional direction for these motions that there'd be an education component with the that you figure out, that staff figure out how to do an education component with the box distribution. That the size of the public be aware that the size of the boxes, they can, if they choose to get a larger box, they can go out on their own and do that outside of our program, and that alternative boxes could be acceptable. You'd have to come up with a reasonable definition of what that was. So those would be sort of CAO. If council agrees with that, can that just be as discussion here and direction to staff through this, or how do we do that?
Yes, that can be direction to staff, and we'll put out that communication with the program.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the council table for any comments before I call the vote on the total motion, which would be well, maybe I'll call for comments just on the 3rd paragraph here that we just discussed first. Comments, Council. I'll just go quickly around the table. Then Councillor Lego, any final comments?
Just can you, does option 2 include subsidy or not?
Yeah, option 2 was the option that had the 50% cost recovery from the town subsidizing 50%.
Okay, all right.
Option 1, which you had indicated you were in favor of, was the unsubsidized one.
Okay. I would have been okay without the 50% subsidy for option 2, but I'll stick with option 1.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cassidy.
Yeah, so I just did some numbers here for everyone to be aware. So I heard the public works manager throw out 750 bins, so that's what I'm using. If they cost, say, $15, we cover half of that. That's about 5,600. If we take the 260 we currently have in our inventory, sell those at the 750, half of the 15, we'll come out with $1,950 a head. If we put that against what our subsidy of the initial 750 would be, we're looking, this might cost us $3,600 to subsidize 50%. If it's $3,600, we can tie a PR campaign to it, improve the quality of our recycling that's going forward. It's going to save us money down the road. It's going to ensure better products, and it's going to ensure more of the stuff people are putting in the recycling bin actually make it to the end goal of actually being recycled instead of winding up in a landfill. So that's what I'll say. Option 2 with the PR campaign over what should go in and some educational pieces on it. So.
Thanks, Councillor Cassidy. Councillor Fenley.
No more comment on it.
Councillor Bath.
I'm going to stick with option 1. I still feel that's the better way to go.
Thank you, Councillor Timpson.
Option 2, and at some point we have to look at how are we going to help businesses with their recycling.
Public Works Manager, do you want to comment on that?
Through you, Mayor Lawrence. Unfortunately, with the new proposed legislation that regulation, that they're currently developing, one of the things that the stewards came forward with, and the Minister of the Environment agreed, was that under the new Resource Recovery and Productivity Act, was that they would not at this time implement any changes to the services that are currently provided. So what they're saying there is that right now the current program that's subsidized through Stewardship Ontario and will now continue potentially to be provided through the full producer responsibility model will only include residential recycling. Their AMO is out there with a voice for municipalities saying that they don't necessarily agree with that they think that the new regulation should include at minimum schools and say seniors centers and so on and so forth, not necessarily the commercial sector, but unfortunately right now it looks like that what's going to come forward with the full producer responsibility model will still not include what we call the IC&I sector, which stands for institutional, commercial, and industrial. It's still going to be left out on its own. Other municipalities do offer services to commercial. And I'll just back up here right now. When I was discussing with Drain Disposal Services about them not continuing to provide services anymore, and then in discussing with B&M Delivery, because B&M Delivery actually offers commercial recycling to Dryden businesses in the forms of giving them a bin. Drain Disposal Services is not getting out of the commercial recycling business, and I'll say the reason why, but it may not be, bearing in mind I don't want to speak for Drain Disposal Services, but I believe the majority of that product that comes from commercial is cardboard, and then cardboard is, there's still somewhat of a market for it. So Drain Disposal Services is continuing to provide commercial recycling for any commercial businesses in Sioux Lookout that want to participate. That is not going away as a service that is currently being offered in Sioux Lookout outside of a municipal service. And then in terms of the full producer responsibility model incorporating IC&I. That's something that after the transition of the residential program is completed in 2025, maybe at that time the provincial government and all the authorities and so forth would come out with a methodology to include that volume in the same type of model. But right now it's not being considered.
Thanks, Public Works. Okay, Councillor Fessman with that.
Well, I think it's unfortunate, but we could help them. We could help businesses if we wanted to. Thank you.
Councillor Howard.
I'm still of the mind of option 2. Like Councillor Cassidy said, you know, we might be looking at a $3,600 cost, but I think with a PR campaign, as I understand, the Environment Committee has already asked that that recycling handout be included in the tax bills distributed to all the residents. So I'm still of the mind of option 2, and of course for people to have their own kind of receptacles to collect the contents in. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. I'm still with option 2. I think in terms of the small cost to encourage recycling, to keep recycles out of our landfill, to be good environmental stewards, and to discourage littering, and try to get as many people involved in the program as possible, I would be with option 2. A small cost, I think, to pay overall here. So I know that a couple of councillors have expressed option 1, and I hope that you'll have to decide. It's going to be one package right now on the whole motion. That's in item 7.2, with the second paragraph including option 1, which was related to the private road pickup. Was that we would deploy public works personnel and collect the blue box materials from all of the private roads. So that was option 1, and this one here is, I'm going to fill in option 2, which was the subsidized blue boxes. This was, unless there's any other comments before I call the vote. Oh, you're raising your hand, Councillor Labor? Your hands.
So it's just one vote for all 3 options.
Let me ask the clerk. It was presented that way. Clerk?
Through Mayor Lawrence, it is at council's discretion. If you wish, you may split the motion into either 2 or 3 pieces. That's at council's discretion.
Okay, thanks. So maybe I'll do that, and I think it'll be a tidier package that way to present, because I don't think that some councillors they've expressed they want to vote for one of them and not the other. So how about I do it that way, clerk? And Councillor Legg, would that help you?
Well, you know what? You have the vote for number 3 anyway, so you might as well just do the whole thing.
Councillor Bath, you were another one who.
I feel the same way. I think it's kind of pointless to split it. I think we all know where we stand. We don't need to have a recorded vote.
Okay, it wasn't a recording, it was just a split vote. Okay.
Similar to the recorded vote.
Thanks, Council. So I will then call the vote with those 2 options, option 1 and 2. This was moved by Councillor Bath and seconded by Councillor Fenlon. Correct, clerk? So all in favor? And unless I see an arm waving or hear somebody, I will say carried. And I will put it out for this, just because it's been discussion. Are there any opposed? And for this, you must make note. Raise your hands. Carried. Thank you very much. I wasn't trying to record the vote. I was trying to do the full council thing where we do all in favor or opposed, whatever. Good discussion, I thought. Good report, Public Works Manager. It's funny how garbage recycles taxis. We know how we handle some situations, but boy, it can be one of those topics that takes a long time, huh? It's close to our driveways, if not our hearts. Thanks, Council and Manager. I'm going to deal with 2 items because before I call a break because they both involve the public works manager. And I think, am I right that he would be free after that, CAO? So just to help the public works manager move along, we'll move along with items 7.3 and 7.4 before we call a break. So item 7.3, the council awards the contract for the rural road work project preparation for resurfacing required for various roads in Sioux Lookout to Bay City contractors in the amount of $268,655 plus HST. And further, the council authorizes the passing of bylaws number 61-20, being a bylaw to authorize and direct the mayor and the clerk to execute a contract between the Corporation of Municipalities of Sioux Lookout and Bay City contractors for the rural road work project preparation for resurfacing as a component of the 2020 rural road resurfacing project. Moved by Councillor Howie, seconded by Councillor Timpson. And it was Councillor Timpson that lifted it, so I'll start the discussion there.
Yeah, I have a great deal of problem awarding this to a out-of-town contractor for the sake of $3,000, which is basically 1%. And I know that the policy is the lowest bidder usually, but I think that we need to consider that this is a local contractor and buy Sioux Lookout first if possible, and particularly at this time when there are people out of jobs and we need to be putting our money back into the community. So that's my concern. I have a real problem supporting Bay City for the sake of a few $3,000. Maybe we need to have some policy where, you know, that defines the difference between contractors. If it's a certain percentage, then we go with the out-of-towner, but I think we need to have something that protects our in-town companies. Thank you.
Public Works Manager.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, at this time, there isn't such a provision in the municipalities' tenders that state as such, and the current procurement policy doesn't stipulate anything to that regard either. Having said that, I think we need to be careful in doing as such, because a lot of the work that is put out for tender within the municipality is won by out-of-town contractors, mainly because there's no local contractors that can provide the service. So therefore, when we put something like this out for bid, and then we're happy to receive bids, and I understand completely the component where it would be nice to award it locally for all the purposes that I think are fairly straightforward. But at the same time, we wouldn't want to discourage out-of-town bids to participate in our tenders, knowing that they're not going to win based on a stipulation that's perhaps in the tender saying that if prices don't vary more than 10% or whatever, then it's going to go to local contractors. I would be wary of that. I think it's something that could be discussed in the future and incorporated into tenders or into the procurement policy. But at this time, the current tender that this was utilized here simply states that the lowest bid will be considered if it's deemed that the contractor is able to conduct such work, and in which case this is. So that's how it's presented at this time.
I'm going to ask the CAO to comment perhaps on provincial legislation.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lawrence, just to echo what our manager of Public Works is saying, I have past experience in dealing with going with percentages if it's within a certain percentage of the lowest bid to go locally. And in my past experience, we've received legal counsel advice on that, and it was determined that it was illegal to do that in our procurement bylaw. Things may have changed since then, but I don't believe they have. And it lessens our ability for competitiveness, because if we keep doing that, whether it's a 10%, 5%, then we will not get the competition from other companies, knowing that if they're close in their bid, bid, it will go to another contractor with those provisions in there. A lot of time and effort does take place from all companies that bid on our submissions. And sometimes it's not just, they find it's not worth the effort if they know that the competition won't be there. So I just caution council, if we are going to go there, that we get another legal opinion.
I believe, thanks, CAO Clerk. Did you have a comment from, no comment, thank you.
Oh, I think that's fair enough, but I think it's definitely something to look at.
Thank you, Councilor Simpson. Anybody else have, it was Councilor Simpson who lifted it. Does anybody else have any comments or questions? Councilor Cassidy.
Yeah, just on that, I just think that, you know, it seems like it's a few $1,000s here and there, but it could turn into tens of $1,000s in legal money down the road, and it's a slippery slope. My comment, I guess, it just curious is with it says with what we approved, the 690, with these two projects coming out of that approved 690,000 for the road resurfacing, it leaves us 174,000 unallocated from that pot. I'm just wondering, is that just not going to be spent? We kind of came in under budget, or is there future plans for that?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Lawrence. A third component of this project involves Public Works doing a component of the work. So what I've done here is I've determined that the total kilometers of road that we're proposing to resurface this year, in past years, Public Work has done all the road prep, and it stretched us very thin because there's somewhat of a tight deadline as to when the roads have to be prepared prior to the surfacing contractor coming to town. So what I did this year, in order to keep costs as low as possible, however, not strain Public Works operations, I chose to do the methodology whereby I contracted out the larger portions of the roads, that the 2.5 kilometers you see here. Public Works still has a component of 1.1 kilometers or so to prepare, and so the remaining dollars that Councillor Cassidy that you calculated there, some of that will be absorbed from the aggregate and so on and so forth. That is going to be utilized for the remaining 1.1 kilometer of road, and then there's also a small contingency amount built into that, which right now we wouldn't utilize. You're correct, and therefore the project has a potential at this time to come in under budget with the contingency not being utilized.
And the contractors you speak of, local?
No. So through you, Mayor Lawrence, this 2.5 kilometers of road would be contracted to Bay City as presented in the report. The other component, which is the second report that's coming up, is the surfacing. That would be awarded to Miller Paving out of New Lister. And then the remaining work on the roads would be done through Public Work operations without the, we would hire. So for example, I think I understand what you're saying now, sorry. Yes, so the aggregate that Public Works would purchase to put down on the roads would come from local contractors, yes.
Okay, that's what I was thinking, yeah, like a third component other than these two, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, sorry, yeah, the aggregate would be sourced locally. Yeah, very good.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Any comments and questions, Council? I'm not seeing any Public Works. I'm assuming this is all part of a year-to-year road resurfacing plan that you have.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, it is. It's a continuation of Public Works, or the municipalities. I'm not going to say Public Works. Sorry, the municipalities' efforts to resurface some of these long overdue rural roads that are far behind in terms of receiving a new surface. So in order to accommodate these roads, which are in a state of disrepair, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. We're just simply going out. Public Works is doing all the drainage work within, say, a 2-year period, whereby we're reinstating ditches, changing cross culverts, entrance culverts, getting the drainage all corrected. And then by doing that over a couple-year period of time, we're accumulating enough road whereby it's a better value to get the surfacing contractor in. He somewhat stipulated that he only would come to Sioux Lookout. It would be a better bang for our buck if we had, like, for example, a minimum of 4 kilometers for him to do when he came here. So that's the methodology there. We're not going, there's no engineered drawings for resurfacing these roads. There's no engineered drawings for the drainage. It's a simple process whereby we're keeping the existing profile, the existing layout, and we're simply just more or less putting a lift of aggregate on the road to better support the new surface and trying to move forward with the roads here that are far behind in terms of when their surface should have been renewed.
Thanks. All right, Council. Nothing further?
I have a question for Andrew.
Councillor Fennell?
Andrew, is there any roads going to be done in Hudson this year?
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, Councillor Fenlon, no, we didn't do any ditching in Hudson last year or in order to accumulate roads. So once we're done this year's surfacing, then there is a plan to continue with some of the residential roads in Hudson with drainage. For example, I believe it's 3rd Street, which is would be east of 3rd Avenue, I believe. So there's a few of them in there. So the plan would be to initiate drainage improvements in there again, maybe possibly the end of this year or starting next year, with then the same methodology whereby we'd accumulate a certain length of roads and then and get in and do the resurfacing. But for this component, there's nothing in Hudson for the surface treatment this year.
Okay, that's fair enough. I had a couple people ask me about it. Oh, that's good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right, Council, I'll call the vote on this one. Moved by Councilor Howley and seconded by Councilor Simpson regarding the preparation for servicing for the 2020 road resurfacing project. All in favor? Balance indicating approval. Carried. Thank you. Item 7.4, 2020 Rural Road Resurfacing Project. The Council awards the contract for the application of double and single surface treatment road resurfacing on various urban and rural roads in Sioux Lookout to Miller Paving Limited in the amount of $248,287.50 plus HST. And further, the Council authorizes passing of bylaw number 58-20 to authorize and direct the Mayor and Clerk to execute the contract between the municipality of Sioux Lookout and Miller Paving Limited for the application of double and single surface treatment on various municipal roads. Moved by Councillor Fenlon, seconded by Councillor Cassidy. Discussion starting with Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't have bothered to lift it. Should have asked this in number 1 or the one before when Councillor Cassidy did. Just basically what was going to happen to the extra $110,000 I calculated after GST, HST for the others. But Public Works Manager answered that. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other councillors with questions on or comments on this item 7.4? You're hearing none. I'll call the vote. Moved by Councillor Fallon, seconded by Councillor Cassidy on the Rural Road Resurfacing Project contract award and execution. All in favor? Silence indicates approval. Hearing nothing and seeing nothing, carried. Thank you. Thanks, Public Works Manager. I think your evening is done.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll just take, we've been at it here for just a little over 2 hours. We'll take about a 7-minute break and come back at 7:45. Carry on with item 7.5. 7 minutes. Thanks, Council. Council seems to be responding appropriately when I say things, so I'm assuming I'm not just a talking head here with no voice. All right, we're at 7:45, so are we all back? Clerk, are you back? Yes. I see the CAO, I see Councillor Fallon. Who are we missing? Councillor Howie, are you back? Councillor Timpson.
I'm back.
Yep.
Mayor Lawrence.
Thank you, Jackie. And at 7:45, I guess we'll get started again. Councillor Howie, you're here now? Yep. Thank you. Resuming the meeting, item 7.5, extension of financial, sorry, not a lifted item, it's already passed. So we're moving to item 7.7, reserve and reserve fund update. The council receives the 2019 reserve and reserve funds update as included and attached to the treasury report number 2020-9 dated June 17, 2020. Moved by Councillor Timpson, seconded by Councillor Bath. And the treasurer is back. Sorry, is the treasurer back? Thanks, for yes, I see you. Thank you. Councillor Bath, let's start the discussion with you.
Okay. I just had one quick little question. I know a couple of years ago we spoke about a reserve and reserve funds policy, and I don't sort of see any indication of that in your report, Carly.
So through you, Mayor Lawrence, currently the municipality does not have a reserve and reserve fund policy in place. That is something that I am looking at bringing to council sometime in the fall.
Through you, Mayor, did we not pass the resolution though to actually have a reserve and reserve funds policy, and it just maybe hasn't been put in force?
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, to my knowledge, there is no reserve and reserve fund policy.
That wasn't my question.
Oh.
My question was, didn't we, I was sure in a council meeting that we did pass that through council, but I can't recall the date, of course. Probably the clerk would be able to recall that very well.
Yeah. So through you, Mayor Lawrence, on August 21st, 2014, council had directed staff to put a policy together. After that date, the treasurer at the time had left, and I don't know if it was just maybe not forgotten, but not looked at.
Okay, that's a good answer.
CAO or clerk, I guess through the CAO, I go to the clerk for the historical record, if that's all right, CAO?
That's fine.
Clerk?
Yes, I can validate that the treasurer's recollection is correct.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any comments or questions on item 7.7? Councilor Timpson.
Yeah, I just again clarification about at that time, not long after that 2014, there was the big to-do about where our reserve funds had gone, and we had the accountant come and talk to us about it and so on, and we were in the process of building it up. So I just want confirmation this is real money in the bank, and $12 million basically is this from this year's budget, or has this been money we've been accumulating over those 5 years? Do you know?
So through you, Mayor Lawrence, the reserves amount that you see at the bottom, the 6.8 million, that is currently, some of it is in our operating account. So it is not in a separate bank account. That is the reserve funds. The 5.9 million is divided out between a GIC and a savings account, which is a total separate account than our current operating. Some of that money that's within the reserve funds is outstanding taxation as well from previous years and from current years. So the amounts that are there are shown, it's accumulated over years and years and years, from anywhere from 2002 until today.
So I think when we come up with a reserve and reserve funds policy, we're going to deal with some of the murky water around the edges of reserves and reserve funds, or the, reserve funds, as I understand it. A fund is an actual separated, segregated bank account dedicated for what it's identified for. It's money in the bank. Although, did I hear you correctly or incorrectly that some of the reserve funds are actually based on taxation due?
No, the reserve funds are in a separate bank account currently.
Yeah, it's the reserves that are, it doesn't have the word fund associated with it. It's where the waters get a bit murky, I think.
Yes.
Any clarification? So, and that will, when we come, you said in the next few months, you're looking at bringing a policy to the table?
Yes, through you, Mayor Lawrence. I'm looking at possibly sometime in the fall.
Anything further, Council? Councilor Cassidy.
Yeah. Clarification on purposes of funds. I see that this center here provide fund renovation and refurbishing of the recreation center. Is that?
My voice was, you've gone wonky there on the audio. Sorry, not sure.
Again. Any better?
Coming across just as total gravel, incomprehensible. Try again. Try again, Councilor Cassidy. Disappeared all. It's like you were muted. Now you are. Okay.
Anything?
There we go. Thanks. Good.
That's better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Unmuting seemed to clear out the pipes.
I went into my settings too there. I clicked it on and off there too. So, yeah, just with regards, I see the fitness center. It says provides funds for the renovation and refurbishing of the recreation center. And I'm just wondering is that the recreation center or just the fitness center? Because I would think the recreation center would fall under facilities buildings.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, that's currently what is laid out with how the wording is for that specific reserve. So we could look at fixing up some of the wording and everything with our reserve and reserve fund when the policy gets established.
Okay, that sounds good. And that the same for the my other one was the parklands. It was just kind of like with the parklands, it's only, from what I kind of read, it's only there to purchase new parklands, or is it there to develop and improve current parklands? And do they have to, it has to be, it is for both? Okay. Okay. That answers that. So thank you very much.
I look forward to the coming report in which we will develop clearer policies, develop policies, and perhaps clarify and regroup for reserves and reserve funds through discussion, recommendations from staff, and discussion at the council table. That would be very good. So anything further on this, Council?
No, I would just like to say, I think we're going to need another in-service training on reserves and reserves funds, where when we had that kerfuffle 4 or 5 years ago, you think you've got it figured out, and then there's another twist in it, and you realize you don't really get it, what has gone on, and where all this money comes from and where it goes. So that's it. I just would like to have some in service at some point from our accountant.
I think the treasurer is determined through the development of the policies and clarifying that we will all understand it. That look forward to that. Is that correct, treasurer?
That's correct. And through you, Mayor Lawrence, I do have a copy of that presentation that was done way back when from Grant Thornton, and I can look at bringing it back up.
Thank you. There being nothing further, I'll call the vote that council receives the reserves and reserve funds update. This was moved by help me clerk, Councillor Timpson, seconded by Councillor Cassidy. Thank you. All in favor? Balance indicating approval. Hearing nothing, seeing nothing, carried. Thank you. 2020 operating financial reports. The council receives the municipal utilities and airport financial statements as of May 29th, 2020. Moved by Councillor Howley, seconded by Councillor Lego. Discussion start with Councillor Cassidy. You left it, I believe, Councillor Cassidy.
Yeah, I was on there too. I'm just kind of curious if these are good snapshots of where we're at, but I do understand that sometimes our expenditures can be a little later in the year and stuff like that. So like I see some of our expenditures, especially like in utilities, we're at 26%. Are there expenditures we're expecting, like some bills that are going to come in further towards the end of the year, say Q3, the beginning Q4, stuff like that, that will shift this? Like, just how are we tracking with that, with some of those knowns that come in maybe a little later in the year?
So through you, Mayor Lawrence, what I do is every week I do a forecast as to what I'm expecting our expenditures are going to be for the next 90 days. And when I'm anticipating additional items to come out, such as long-term debt. Not all of our long-term debt comes out every month. Some of it's quarterly, sometimes it's only twice a year, so I take that into consideration. So some of those numbers that you see in regards to, for example, like long-term debt, I do look at that from on a longer broad to make sure that our cash flow and our revenue coming in is going to line up appropriately.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions around the council table? Councillor Lego.
Yeah, just if the treasurer, is there any areas of concern with at the end of May there that you're seeing with the cash flow and expenditures?
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, not that I can see of at the moment. However, the true nature of our cash flow in regards to our expenditures and our revenue is really going to show, I believe, over the next 4 to 5 months, with the tax bills coming out at the end of the month, and how the economy is actually going to start back up and how that is actually truly going to affect businesses in regards to taxation and outstanding utilities and accounts receivable. That's where we're going to see, I honestly believe that's where we're going to see the biggest look at what our expenditures and revenues are truly going to look at in regards to outstanding payments.
Okay, thanks.
Anything further, council? Then I'll call the vote for item 7.8, operating and financial reports be received. All in favor? Sounds indicating approval. Seeing nothing, hearing nothing, carried. Item 7.9. The council approves the addition of the kayak kiosk component of the waterfront development project, and further that the cost for the kayak kiosk be incorporated in the contract through a change order in the amount of $9,655.79. Moved by Councillor Lego, seconded by Councillor Cassidy, and Councillor Timpson.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that the kayak rack and canoe rack would be for the use of the Sioux public to park their kayaks and canoes there, as well as possible rentals.
CIO, I'm not sure who's best to answer this question. Sorry, mute CIO. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lawrence. I don't want to put the clerk on the spot, but I wasn't here originally when this was all planned. To my knowledge, I believe it's for both, but I could stand corrected. Perhaps Brian could comment on that.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, my understanding is that primarily it's intended to be a rental kiosk because there's an economic development element to it, and that's why the funder was insistent that it be added back into the project. However, that doesn't necessarily preclude the possibility of having a portion of it available for local storage or that effect. I think as long as we're able to demonstrate to the funder that the primary use is for economic development purposes in terms of promoting rentals of kayaks and kiosks and so on, those types of things.
Thank you, Councillor Timpson. Good with that.
Thank you.
Any further comments or questions, Council? Councillor Cassidy.
Yeah, I agree. I think whether or not you rent a space within the kiosk or you rent a kayak out of it, either way, it's economic development. So whatever business model is best going to suit the people of Sioux Lookout, I think economic development can be tied to it either way.
Thank you. Councillor Timpson.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Cassidy. I mean, we have to keep in mind that it's the taxpayers of Sioux Lookout who are covering the cost of this, and they should be getting something out of it. It shouldn't just be for tourists and the businesses that benefit from tourists, but from the people just who live here and pay their taxes. And
yeah, absolutely. Not forgetting though that we did apply the municipal accommodation tax, which is based to be directed on tourism as well. So it's for both. CAO, did you have a comment?
I was just going to further clarify in my discussions with Mr. Curtis September that with reference to the kayak kiosk, and in addition to the comments from our clerk, he did indicate that it is primarily not for economic development and tourism alike. So we have to make sure that we absolutely have that component in there for rentals.
Thank you. Anything further, Council? Then I'll call the vote on the kayak kiosk. All in favor? Silence indicating approval. Hearing or seeing nothing, carried. Thank you. Item 7.10, new procedure bylaw. The council gives first and second readings to bylaw number 09-20, being a bylaw governing the calling, place, and proceedings of municipal council and council appointed boards, commissions, and committees, and to rescind bylaw number 14-13 as amended. Moved by Councillor Bath, seconded by Councillor Fallon. And start the discussion with Councillor Timpson. Just before we do, sorry, I didn't say thank you to the treasurer. I believe she was all done. So pass that on, CAO. Thanks to the treasurer. Councillor Timpson, starting discussion with you. You're there. As people leave the meeting, people get shifted around in the gallery in front of you, and I think they've disappeared. But Councillor Timpson, you're still on mute.
Yeah, I really feel that I'd like to see us have a separate meeting just to discuss this, because I think it was going to take a long time. My initial impression is that this is a policy geared for larger municipalities and larger councils, not for a small town, a small diverse town with the cultural diversity we have here. And I feel that it doesn't fit with our strategic plan that we just passed, that we have to recognize diversity, we have to recognize the public engagement when we, and that it should be suitable for a council that follows this council. Like little details such as that the meeting be a Wednesday night at 5:30 or all these provisions. That may not work for a later council, and they may want to change it. And why reopen the act when we can just have a clause in there that each council will decide when their meetings will be. But in terms of, I think, when we think of our town, we want to attract women, we want to attract First Nations, we want to attract single mothers, for example, mothers with children, to be on council. The rigid prescription as to how meetings should be managed is not how First Nations conduct business. It's not how women conduct business. And the timing of meetings would not suit a woman with a family. So these are things that just, I think, really need to be looked at. We have to look at the electronic, that we have electronic access if you, under 238 of the Municipal Act, where you can participate electronically if you're not there. There's two people on this council, for example, who we travel a lot. We may be stuck somewhere. We might want to be part of the meeting, but we may not be able to be part of the meeting. And it would be beneficial if we could participate electronically. And I think we have to remember too that we are not full-time, and these kinds of prescriptions are, to me, for full-time counselors, not for part-time, basically almost volunteers if you look at the hours we put in. In terms of public engagement, there's nothing in there concerning that the public, yes, they can come to meetings, but there's nothing in there that says they can ask questions or make comments. There's the rigid rules. I can't see them applying to committees. If you want our committees, we're not making big policies. We're doing projects, for example, and to stifle the conversation the way it's prescribed in here, it could just drive people away from wanting to be involved in our work. So I just found it too prescriptive for what we are, suitable for a larger municipality where you need to have rules. Even the delegations, for example, that the delegate can speak once and that's it. And there's, we want people to come to council, but we're restricting them by this. And I'd have to say that, the prescribed way of debating, and they use the word debate, and I think the word should be discussion. We're here to discuss. We're not to debate and to put down the other's opinion. We're here to get information and to come to a consensus as much as possible. And when I think about the way that's prescribed, that, you put your hand up and the mayor appoints you and so on, and having done it this way, virtually, I find this way, you go around the circle, maybe once or twice. I think that's a far more effective way of getting everybody gets their point in there. Everybody is heard, and essentially, if you look at what we've done, we've pretty well had consensus on the things that we have discussed virtually. So I would like to see this. I would like to really see this geared towards our town, and not and far less prescriptive. So there were, I had 24 comments on it, which I can't go into them all, but I think we're really missing a chance here to tell the public that we want to hear you. We want to invite other people to be part of councils by making it easier for them, and not restricting them by, things that really aren't relevant in my view. Some of their formalities to me they're not really, they're distractions. Like, I know people, supposed to speak through the chair. But to me, that's just an extra few words that don't mean much to me. And yes, maybe that has to be done in the Parliament of Canada, but not in a small council of 7 people in a small town. So that's what I have to say about the thing. I'd like to see us have a separate discussion on it, and people submit their comments on various sections.
Thank you. So I'll, clerk, and this is CIO, this is the clerk's report, I believe. Yeah. Do you want to make any comments, or shall I go around the table first, clerk?
Through Mayor Lawrence, I'm comfortable with whichever process you wish to follow.
Just to keep it fresh in your mind, I'll say, why don't you respond or any comments you have for Councillor Timpson?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lawrence. I can't respond to all of Councillor Timpson's comments. Whether or not Council wishes to discuss this at a separate meeting is Council's decision, of course. With respect to the comments about some of the provisions that are included in the bylaw, for example, the time of meetings has to be included in the bylaw. It's part of why the bylaw exists. And as Councillor Timpson referred to the legislation, so will I. Technically, and if you look at the formal name of the bylaw, it's not the procedure bylaw, it's a bylaw governing the calling, place, and proceedings of council. That is its raison d'etre. It exists to enumerate those items so that all members of council know what they are and can play by the same rule book. With respect to the comments of addressing questions to the chair, that's something we've always done. It's a key element of good meeting management. It is also in keeping with the tradition, the parliamentary tradition. That is the tradition that we follow. We are an order of government. Council is an order of government, and there is an expectation both in the legislation as well as with respect to decorum and conduct. There are expectations in the public. So with respect to it being geared to a larger municipality, respectfully, I disagree. I know for a fact this bylaw was developed from a workshop that I attended, that was attended by municipalities that were all actually smaller than Sioux Lookout, and they also use this as the basis for their procedure bylaw. We've tried to do a few things with this bylaw to make it a little more user-friendly in terms of including much more clear section headings and so on and so forth, so that it's easier to find information. I'll just leave my comments at that for now. Thank you.
I'm going to go around the table for general comments. Go to Councillor Legman.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind having a special meeting on this. It's very wordy, and I'm sure Brian understands it all, but it's going to take us a long time to go through all the nuances of this. And the bylaw, as stated in our strat plan, should be in the spirit of our strategic plan as well, right? So maybe we can have some input. I don't know if you want or need this passed today. I don't know what Brian's take on that is.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, no, it was never the intent to pass it today. I had recommended it for first and second readings. I anticipated that members of council would have questions and perhaps some revisions to some of the provisions. So it can be dealt with as council deems fit, whether it's withdrawn and deferred to a special meeting or otherwise. Or council can provide some input, and I can come back with a second draft in July. It really is entirely up to council.
All right, Councilor Legault.
Yeah, I would like to have a chance to really digest this. The few days that we had it to go over and all the other reports, it's just, it was a long report. So I would like a chance to go over it for probably the next week or 2 weeks and make notes and either pass that on to Brian or have a meeting, either or. I'm okay with just sending my thoughts to Brian on it, but I do need more time to digest it.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Cassidy.
Yeah, I do agree with Councilor Timpson and Councilor Lego in sense. There is a lot, and bless you, Brian, for your ability to pull this stuff together, because I might start this, but I'd probably never finish it. There's a lot of words here. It's a very in-depth policy and a lot of stuff to kind of really wrap your head around and understand. And I agree with Councilor Lago, the few days to really, it's just not enough to digest. My main comment I had about it, though, is ties to something Councilor Timpson said too, is we're part-time councilors, we're part-time government, I guess, in essence. We all have other jobs, or most of us have other jobs, other commitments in our lives. The one thing that I've noticed since being on here is trying to balance my other career and having a child and whatnot. And in the way that some of the special council meetings are called, it's at this time, can you make it, yes or no? If I say, well, can you push it back an hour or 2 hours, and I can probably make it because I have something I can't, and that's like, well, we have quorum without you, so we'll just go ahead. To my understanding, we should apply some of the duty to accommodate to this as well for people that do have other commitments, we should try and accommodate it, whether it be an hour. Like, I get it. If I'm out of town, I'm out of town. I'm not going to make the meeting. I'm okay with that. But there should be some type of consensus that if we're calling a special council meeting, if it's got to be on a certain day, maybe there's 3 time slots. That email goes out, what one works best for everyone, if there's a preference. And then we coordinate the meeting that way, so we can get every councilor at the table. We can get everyone's input. And that'll open the door to more people that potentially do have other jobs that have thought about it, but hey, I can't make it all the time or whatnot, and it could help facilitate that. So that was my comment about it. And I'm good either way, with either a meeting to go through it a little more or submitting comments as well. And I do agree with Councilor Lego, just a bit of time to digest and go through it all as well.
Thank you. Councilor Fallon.
I agree with everybody else there that's going. This is a big document, and one thing that I would like to see is the changes, the current changes that are in there be highlighted so people can see and understand that it's a new change to the document itself. And when can we have another meeting to put this document together? I guess it is a large document. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Brown.
Yeah, I can understand. I worked on the last procedural bylaw we did. I was a new councillor then, and I spent hours and hours and hours and weeks working with Mary and Brian on it, and it was a lot of work. This was actually a pretty simple one compared to the old one. So it is still fairly authoritative. But I don't know how you can not be authoritative. It's fine to say we'd like to act as a small town, but we're not acting as a small town. We're acting as an official council of a municipality. So whether it's a small town of 5,000 or 20,000, we still have to act the same way. I'm concerned that all of a sudden we can just sit and do what we want, or councillors think we can sit and do what we want without having rules. We need the rules. I found a few things I didn't like in it, and generally they were technical. But overall, I find it's a much easier to follow document than the previous one. I don't deny that you need more time, like when we did the previous one, and I think that's why I can breeze through this one a little quicker. The previous one took, I would say it probably took 3 or 4 months. Brian, you could probably correct me on that, but I bet you it took 3 or 4 months to get it to the final state. And I can see this thing doing the same thing. But I think if you go through the document, if you use eScribe, it works really, really well. You can pick out the parts you don't like. You can annotate, that's the word. You can put a little spot on it and show what you want to say right there. And you can send that right off to Brian, and it's got all your comments on it. And that works pretty well. You see what you sent, he sees what you sent, and you get a chance to, he gets a chance to at least compile them. Trying to compile a long written list of things from people sending them in, I think it's going to be next to impossible. So I don't know. I found this was a very efficient way to do it by annotating it. That's all.
Thanks, Councillor Bass. Councillor Howard.
Yeah, so I do recognize that we do need, of course, rules and regulations to govern how we act. And I think as a council and a municipality, we can foster a culture that welcomes people to the table and welcomes discussion. And in that point, I think that accessibility and accommodation is important, especially when we look at scheduling meetings and how we run meetings. And I do agree with Councillor Timpson that we need to explore electronic participation in meetings outside of necessarily a declared emergency for this council and even for future councils. So we have people willing to run, a single parent family or a professional that travels into our north. So I think that's one of my comments for addition into the bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you. I wasn't sure I heard Councillor Simpson talk about electronic participation in meetings.
Sorry, I didn't catch what you said, Mayor.
Councillor Howard referred to you talking about electronic participation in meetings. I wasn't sure that you had said that.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Thanks. All right, Council and Clerk, Clerk, before I come back to you, I'm just going to suggest, from what I've heard, it sounds like we need more time, which is perhaps not a surprise. And Clerk, yeah, I would go along with Councillor Cassidy, applaud you on putting all this together. It's a great job to start. I'm going to suggest, I heard you use the word clerk with draw the motion tonight. I'm going to suggest that the clerk put out a set of rules for submitting comments to the clerk on the just guidelines so that he can decipher everything. I'm not sure if everybody, Councillor Bath, is going to be comfortable with annotating the report in eScribe, but if you could just sort of set out how you would like to receive comments, that keeps it open to people to comment on anything, but it allows you then to compile and maybe get all the commonalities in the comments. And I'm going to suggest that we do have a special meeting to discuss this at length, and not put a timeline on that. Give maybe council is I think 3 to 4 weeks to get your comments to the clerk. Fair enough. Okay, let's say by the next council meeting, you will have got your comments to the clerk. How's that? And then the clerk would take the comments and give. Maybe he will need 2 months to compile. Maybe set a special meeting date for sometime. I think we're into, where are we now, mid-June? So July, I think we're into early September for a special council meeting to review this. With you not having done anything to change what you presented here, that's still a presentation. Council is going to comment on that, and you will do the best you can. I know this is quite a different document than the last time. I don't think you can note all the changes. You could maybe summarize the significant changes from the previous document to this one. And that'll all be presented at a special council meeting sometime in early September, a standalone special council meeting to discuss this. Council, would that be agreeable to council? We do, and declare we do have a procedural bylaw now that we're operating under. So we're not in a vacuum. We have a procedural bylaw. This is a proposed new one. So I'll just go to clerk. Just help me, clerk. Are you agreeable to that? I've been watching you. I think your head nod, but clerk, your comments.
Yes, Mayor Lawrence, through you, absolutely. The process you've outlined is I'm very comfortable with. If council is, certainly. What I would likely, with respect to the feedback, Councillor Bath is right. The eScribe annotation is very convenient. However, if not everyone's comfortable with that, I'll accept emails, if you can just be really clear what provision you're speaking about, by referring to a section number, so that I can very clearly understand your feedback. That would be really helpful. And then, as you've outlined, Mayor Lawrence, I would compile all of that, collated in the sense that repeated comments or similar comments would be merged into one, and then what I could prepare is a bit of a chart that I could take council through at a special council meeting, showing the provision, the nature of the comments, and then comments from staff as to why it's been in, why it's been taken out, if there's any concerns with anything that's being proposed by any of the members of council, and then that would sort of be a bit of a presentation to kick off a special meeting when that time arrives, if that's agreeable.
Sounds agreeable. The only thing I'm wondering, Councillor Fenlon's question and comment about comparison with the existing one, if you put 10 or 12, 15 points together, the significant variations or what you were trying to achieve with this one compared to the last one, is that fair enough that you would put that out in the next couple of weeks as councillors are doing their comments?
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, that would be a larger task, and to do a red line version.
I'm not asking for a red line, I'm just the significant changes, or maybe it's not.
Yeah, my fear in proceeding that way, I did provide sort of a high level outline of some of the significant changes in the staff report. However, to go beyond that, my fear would be that I would miss something, and so I see the CAO wishes to speak, so I'll defer to her. Through you, Mayor Lawrence.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, I was just going to add what our clerk has already said, that this is a total, and what Councillor Bath has said, this is a total revamp of the procedure bylaw, so it's not easy to compare section to section from the old bylaw to the new, because it's been totally rewritten. So it would be quite difficult to do that. So I would suggest that we just highlight significant things that have happened at a higher level between the two.
Okay, that's fine. Fine for me, and it'll be the honor to be on council to read the old one, read the new one, and take out if there's something not in the new one that was in the old one you liked, or something you didn't like it's still in. The onus would be on council to do that. Council, are you all right with that general process? I think that's more or less.
Yes.
Yeah. When would the comments to Brian be due?
We suggested by the next council meeting, instead of saying 4 weeks, just by the next council meeting. Not that they're going to be part of the next council meeting. It was just is that long enough? So that would be mid-July. I'm not sure when the council meeting in July is. Sorry, clerk. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Lawrence. The next council meeting is July 15th. So yeah, just under a month.
Sounds like 4 weeks from 4 weeks. Is 4 weeks long enough, council?
And do you want us to go through or just highlight specific clauses, Brian, and comment on specific clauses that we have a comment about, or what? How would you like?
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, that would be the easiest way for me to be able to compare all the comments of council and find if there's any commonalities. That would be really helpful. However, if there are sort of overarching comments that maybe don't apply to any particular provision, then please feel free to include those as well.
Yeah, if you want to have a separate narrative or a separate list of points, councillors, that aren't really, you're not referencing something that's in the proposed bylaw, you want to make a comment that you'd like to see it in, so just make that as a separate list. But certainly, as far as possible, reference the numbering system in the bylaw itself. Fair enough, council? Okay, so then this was moved, I believe by, oh boy, Councillor Bath and seconded by Councillor Fenlon. Correct, clerk? So the process, sorry.
Through Mayor Lawrence, yes, that's correct.
Process to withdraw it?
my recommendation, if it's amenable to council, would be that we just give it first reading tonight instead of first and second. That way it does at least get it out there, and that way when it after the special meeting, we would then do second and third readings, you know, for the final version, if that's agreeable to council.
Or we could do a meeting for second and a meeting for third. We'll see how it goes. So to put it on the table, then we would change the motion to read we strike out and second. So first reading. Again, clerk, can I just suggest that as an amendment and ask the mover and seconder if they're all right with that? Mover, Councillor Bath?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Seconder, Councillor Fallon?
Works for me.
Thank you. So I'm going to call the motion as written with for a first reading only, striking out and second reading. All in favor? Sounds indicating approval. Hearing or seeing nothing, carried. Thank you, council. Thank you, clerk. Item 7.12, and clerk, can I ask you to read that motion, the additional motion?
Sorry, Mayor Lawrence, I believe item 7.11 was lifted as well.
Well, I'm sorry, did I skip that? I'm sorry. I thought that was, you're right, correct. Thank you. Thanks, clerk. 7.11, review of suspension of boards, commissions, and committee meetings. The council directs that its boards, commissions, and committees remain on hiatus for the months of July and August. Moved by Councillor Howie, seconded by Councillor Timpson, and discussion starting with Councillor Timpson.
I'm really afraid that, you know, people are going to lose interest in the whole idea of committees by continuing to defer this. The Environment Committee is carried on with articles because we decided on that back in February. But I'm just really worried, you know, we want public engagement, and if even maybe there could be a touch base type of meeting with the committees. That's my concern.
I'll ask CAO or clerk for comment. CAO.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, part of the reason why staff are asking for that further extension is because it makes it extremely difficult to compete for time for these virtual calls for our meetings, and also our staff resources right now are taxed. We're now in the process of also bringing back our daycare workers, our daycare staff to open up our daycares. We're still working on policies and procedures and putting things in place to open up our buildings to the public. So we're extremely busy, and for that reason, the staff resources are limited. And so we feel that at this time, we need that extra time until we get back to a little bit more normalcy to be able to entertain our staff resources for these, to commit to these committees with reference to agendas, meetings, you know, follow-up action items on that, from those committees, and also doing the minutes from them.
Thank you. Council, any further comments at the council table? I'll go around. Councillor Leahy.
Well, I think people understand we're in the middle of a pandemic and meetings are sort of on the back burner for most people. You know, we're just trying to get through our day-to-day lives here with not being able to move around, not being able to go visit people. As CAOs just stated, staff resources are taxed to the max at the moment. We're just in the beginning processes of opening up everything. So I'm okay with extending it, and maybe everyone can just go and enjoy their family and friends and enjoy the summer instead of worrying about meetings. That's all I have to say on that.
Thank you. Councillor Cassidy.
Yeah, with the CAO's comments there, I think it's just there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes that we don't see. So I think I don't see a big deal in giving it a couple more months till August, and things are still constantly changing. The situation's constantly changing, so we want to start worrying about this, and you don't know what COVID and everything's going to do. So I think it's best to just kind of leave it as it is. So.
Thank you. Councillor Fennell.
Yes, I agree with everybody else. And some of the committees, like the Hudson Advisory Committee, is not expecting to meet until maybe September sometime. And other committees probably take a break for the summertime to enjoy it and spend time at home. So I think the CEO is on the right track to keep us down for a bit more.
Councillor Bath.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. We have a couple of the boards that I'm on are a little different. They don't require staff time, and there's been a little bit of loosening up in both hydro and in PACE. So I may be requesting sometime that we consider them. Be like right now, I consider them as committees of council, even though they aren't. And I think it's just to be fair to everybody that they're not the same, and we need to remember that PACE is a completely different committee, and so is hydro. So we need to. They really don't fit in that sentence of they're separate. They don't use staff. They don't use staff resources. They don't use staff, municipal facilities. Well, I guess hydro does actually. Yeah, that's all on that. I'm okay with leaving it longer though.
Councillor Howard.
I'm okay with leaving the hiatus on committees until August. However, I mean, we obviously want to see these flourish, and maybe down the road we can have some kind of electronic participation. Thank you.
And Councillor Timpson, I'll go back to you. You started it, I'll let you finish it.
I lost. No, fair enough. I would, again, maybe a touch base meeting only might just to kind of keep people, wouldn't even have to be minuted, I suppose. Like maybe you would have to, I don't know, under our bylaw, yeah. But it might, I don't know. I think a touch base meeting would be nice, but if people aren't interested, that's fine too.
Yeah, I'm not so sure aren't interested. I think it's a recognition of some realities regarding staff. And also, some of the committee members may themselves, in fact, not want to participate yet. They might want to be more cautious. But I think council has clearly supported the hiatus. So I will call the vote. Did I have a mover and a seconder, Mr. Clerk?
Through Mayor Lawrence, yes. Councillors Howie and Timpson.
Thank you. So moved by Councillor Howie, seconded by Councillor Timpson, that the hiatus remain for boards, commissions, and committees. All in favor, sounds indicating approval, and if you're opposed, please feel free to vote in opposition. Hearing nothing, seeing nothing, carried. Thank you. Okay, so item 712, and I did find the paper, Clerk, so I could read 712 if you like. Moved by Councillor Cassidy, seconded by Councillor Fallon, that council hereby supports the nomination of Doug Lawrence to the AMO Northern Caucus. And I'll just give a brief, this is basically an administrative item. I'm on the Northern Caucus. There's a sort of a disconnect in the timing between in 2017, I was elected as vice president of NOMA, and went to on the NOMA board. If you're the president or vice president, you're automatically then NOMA representatives on the AMO board. So I went to AMO in 2017. I was re-elected in 2019 as vice president, so back on the AMO board. Somehow there's an overlap or an underlap in the various agencies, and AMO requires support from councils for me to be in that position on the AMO board. And I'm automatically also on the Northern Caucus. That's what the AMO group of 40 or so directors is split up according to where you come from. The Northern Caucus consists of NOMA, Northwestern Ontario Municipal Association, and FONOM, the Federation of Northern Ontario Municipalities. So a large chunk of Northern Ontario, and that's the AMO Northern Caucus. You're automatically placed in that. So this is, AMO requires council support that. Here it is. Discussion, and I believe it was Councillor Timpson who lifted it. So I'll start with you, Councillor Timpson.
I couldn't hear you very well. It so this is not an extra position. It's just as part of your regular representation of NOMA onto AMO. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. It's something, and I thought it came out of the blue from NOMA. Apparently, I might have received the request for this several months ago in March, and I apologize to the clerk and to council for missing it. It was brought to my attention today or yesterday by the executive director of NOMA, Kristen Oliver, that I needed to have this council resolution. That AMO needed it on record. There's no change in what I'm doing currently whatsoever. If you don't support it, then I guess I'll have to probably resign from AMO. I would be automatically off AMO. I'd probably resign from NOMA because lack of support. That's it. So
there's no financial implication for us. Is there more? Like, is it all covered by AMO and NOMA?
Mainly
extra?
The status quo that's been existing for since 2017, since I was elected vice president of NOMA. Saying nothing's changing.
Thank you.
Any further discussion, Council? Thank you. All in favor? Silence indicating approval. Hearing nothing, seeing nothing, carried. Thank you. And I would ask the clerk to communicate this to NOMA and AMO as soon as possible. Thank you very much. And I apologize again for the lateness of it. Council, I think we are through item requiring separate discussion, and we move on to the bylaws. Correct, clerk?
Yes, through Mayor Lawrence. May I request a brief recess? There's a bit of a disturbance outside of my door here, and I need to address that. May we have a brief recess so I can deal with that?
So when we come back, we'll do the bylaws and the reports, and then move into closed session. So it's 8:42. Let's say come back in 5 or 6 minutes. 8:47, 8:48. Recess until 8:48. Thank you. I guess that's representative democracy. You're speaking for her.
Yes.
I'll go down and check.
I'm back.
Ken, how are you feeling, clerk? You ready to voice bylaws? Thank you.
Certainly, Mayor Lawrence, happy to do so. The following bylaws are being presented for first, second, and third readings. Bylaw number 09-20 being a bylaw. Oops, my apologies. That one doesn't belong up there. Sorry, bylaw number 5820 being a bylaw to authorize and direct the mayor and clerk to execute a contract between the corporation of the municipality of Sioux and Miller Paving Limited for the application of double and single surface treatment on various municipal roads. Bylaw number 59-20 being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to enter into and execute the municipal funding agreement for the transfer of dedicated gas tax funds for the public transportation program between the corporation of the municipality of Sioux and the Minister of Transportation for the province of Ontario. Bylaw number 60-20 being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 48-20 being a bylaw to provide financial relief during COVID-19. And bylaw number 61-20 being a bylaw to authorize and direct the mayor and the clerk to execute a contract between the corporation of the municipality of Sioux and Bay City contractors for the Rural Road Work Project preparation for resurfacing as a component of the 2020 Rural Road Resurfacing Project. And then there will be one more that we'll just give first reading to afterwards.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Bass, seconded by Councillor Timpson. All in favor? Silence indicates approval. Carried. Thank you. And go ahead, Clerk.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, that bylaw number 09-20 being a bylaw governing the calling, place, and proceedings of meetings of council and council appointed boards, commissions, and committees, and to rescind bylaw number 14-13 as amended, be read a first time.
And that will be moved by Councillor Hawley, seconded by Councillor Lego. All in favor? Silence indicating approval. Hearing nothing, seeing nothing. Carried. Councillor Timpson, are you still here? Oh, okay, sorry. All in favor? Carried. I'm wondering if one of could the deputy or CAO contact Councillor Timpson? Thank you. I kind of think it's a technical slip. Something's happened. Notices of motion to reconsider. There are none. Thank you. So, councillor reports. I'll start. We'll just go around the same way we've been going tonight. Councillor Lego.
Okay. Well, it's going to be the same with most people on council. I had the 2 waterfront development meetings. Had the telephone conversation with Chad Zaselmo regarding the municipal service delivery. Did the e-scribe training with Jackie, and I actually had a teleconference meeting with the Kenora Home for the Aged board on June 11th. Just going through all of the paperwork that the government sends them in regards to COVID-19. We haven't met since February, so they called a teleconference meeting. Besides that, no COVID cases in any of the 3 homes, and they're quite happy with the way the government's been dealing with COVID and the long-term care homes across Ontario. They're quite pleased with what the government's been doing. So that's my report.
Thank you. Councillor Cassidy.
Yeah, similar with their the waterfront and the waterfront meeting, the municipal service delivery phone call, had a good conversation there, and just monitoring emails and just holding out, waiting for things to get back to some sort of normal. So.
Thank you. Councillor Fallon.
I had an LCC meeting on last Tuesday, I believe it was, and nothing much there. They're trying to get the meetings more enhanced because we don't get enough information from other people that are working on the plans and whatnot throughout the forest, and so they're trying to look at different avenues to get with the way we have to do it, by telephone. To get more people involved in it, more people that are working on the plans, and that's about it. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ben.
So yeah, we've had one hydro meeting. Of course, that's with WebEx, and we'll have another one tomorrow morning. And I've had several PACE meetings. We're dealing with the RRF. Loans. That's a regional, can't remember what it is now. Anyway, it's a $40,000 loan at FedNor we give to businesses that are that are suffering because of COVID. Most of it's tourist industry. So far we've done about $600,000 in these loans. We'll have another meeting tomorrow afternoon, and I suspect we'll probably do another couple of $100,000. We have $930,000 that we can loan. And this is under strict FedDev guidelines. That's it.
Councillor Brown. And Councillor Tenson, I'll come to you. Sorry, you had some technical difficulties. All the way while you were gone was the passing of the bylaws section of the meeting, item 10.
Okay.
And you're back. I assume with technical difficulties. We're just doing now the councillor reports.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Your screen is a little bit.
Sorry, you can't see me?
Well, we can see you now from the nose up. Yeah.
Okay, whatever. That's all you want to see. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I've been to 2 library board meetings discussing the opening of the library. The CEO would like to have more communication with the municipality. So I am thinking it might be worthwhile to have come out with some protocols between library and municipality. We can discuss that at some point. The poverty reduction strategy is wrapping up, and they have done a fantastic job in leaving a lot of new skills with the community. I'm very proud of that staff. We're actually going to be asking the mayor if you would be able to write a letter to Brenda Dovich on council's behalf for her work and the creativity in getting this project done. Environment Committee, we've been writing articles that we decided to do, and I've got one coming in next week, I think. And I wrote it on COVID and the environment and what we've learned from COVID. Northwest Health Units, I was going on their weekly updates, and spent a lot of time listening to the Municipal World Municipal Shares. Really interesting little chats between the editor of the Municipal Word magazine and people in municipal positions, just basically about everything about what we're going to be facing after the COVID in terms of budgets, new ways of doing things. Very interesting. I suggest anybody who's got a half an hour just to listen to them. They're very easy to listen to. And a special council meeting, of course, training on laptops. I think that's about it. I just wanted to mention, I assume people know there's been about 8 new cases essentially, it seems, from the 3 people in the hospital and 5 outside the hospital identified of COVID. So just it's back. That's about it.
Thank you. Yeah, and those cases haven't been when they've become cases when the health unit identifies them as such. There's perhaps not. There's a little lack of clarity there just yet. Yeah,
some may like a number of them are in the north, so it's fuzzy as to who's from where. So, but yeah, it isn't clear at this point, but it's clear that it's back. So,
thank you, Councillor Howard. And your screen is low as well. You're coming into view. You're growing.
There we go. I'll stop slouching. So I of course had my my meeting with Chaz as well, and also the eScribe training that Jackie had hosted last Friday. Other than that, I've just been speaking to people and kind of getting their take on our meetings and just getting a general feel. That's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Timpson, on your point for the letter, I'd be happy to write that letter. We'll communicate that after you'll send me.
Yeah.
I've been involved with the various boards, the district services board meeting, and Councillor Timpson, you recall you've asked for reports, and finally a report was issued, and the CAO on the goings on of the board meetings, the district services board. So it's like a council in brief, a report has started to be issued, and you received the first one. All the council did. The CAO distributed it today.
Yes, I got it just before council. That's good. Thank you.
So that I believe will now be coming out.
That's good. Thank you.
Been participating on the various calls the municipalities involved in, the vulnerable population calls, the municipal agency update call, the Northwest Health Unit municipal weekly calls, which are now bi-weekly, I think. Minister Rickford's weekly calls have been on those for the last, with mayors, have been on those for the last 3 weeks. Participated in the Pride flag raising. We've had a few NOMA executive and board meeting today for NOMA, lots of discussion about fire evacuation, and it still seems to remain the position of NOMA that in general that we're asking the province to take care of this, and I think given our local situation, that's probably where we're going to be standing too, just in that, no change there. There's an annual board meeting this Friday, and various special meetings, and a few responses to municipal citizens on email questions. Council meetings as you've all had, and taking time to write a few mayor's desk articles and reply to the media on questions as they come along. And keeping busy virtually and in reality as well. So we are now into the area where we'll move into closed session. So clerk, you'll let me know what happens in terms of the meeting electronic organization. The council moves into closed session at 9:03 p.m. to discuss matters of a general nature as noted below. 1, subject matter relating to a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or behalf of the municipality or local board pursuant to the Municipal Act 2001 as amended. 2 items, 1, negotiations respecting community safety, and 2, negotiations respecting provision of services. And second item, subject matter relating to personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal and local board employees. Per the Municipal Act, 1 item, appointments to councils, boards, commissions, and committees membership. Moved by Councillor Fallon, seconded by Councillor Bath. And we move into closed session. All in favor? Carried. And clerk, do we need to pause a moment, or what do we do here? The host is inviting you to join breakout room. So you'll see a box in the middle of your screen. Click join. There we are. 1, 2, 3. There we go. So you took detours, I think. And we're waiting for the clerk.
He was waiting for me.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I see all of council, CAO clerk.
Mhm.
And the deputy is in office at
Sorry, we have that sound thing again, clerk.
more.
We're good to go. Can everybody hear me? All right, so we'll, the council ratifies motions. We have no motions to ratify. One, we do.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence,
Sorry, we can't hear you, clerk. Can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
that's so bizarre because can you hear
Yeah,
me
we
now?
can.
Okay. Yeah, so no direction to staff in closed session. However, we do have the one motion to approve an open session, which had to do with the boards and committees.
Yes.
I can read that motion if you like.
Thank you.
That council approves amending Schedule A to bylaw number 92-18, being a bylaw to make appointments to various boards, commissions, and committees by deleting Monika Orzechowska from the Municipal Committee on Truth and Reconciliation.
We need a mover for that. Moved by Councillor Fallon, seconded by Councillor Bath. All in favor? Thank you. Carried. Confirmatory bylaw number 57-20 to confirm the proceedings of the Council of Sioux Lookout for the June 17th, 2020 regular council meeting be read first, second, third time and passed. Moved by Councillor Timpson, seconded by Councillor Howie. All in favor? Carried. And we still need a motion to adjourn. I know in the new bylaw, the procedural bylaw, we may not, but in this one we still do. Motion to adjourn, moved by Councillor Lego, seconded by Councillor Cassidy, that the regular meeting of Council June 17th is adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody. All in favor? Carried. We are adjourned. Good night and thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good
Right.
night.
Thank you.